What's going on, night timers? Saturday night stream here on the Romero channel. What's going on, everybody? Hope everybody's doing well. I got a special guest with me over here. No, over here, all the way from the great state of New York. This is Grande's Graveyard. John Grande with me. How you doing, man?
Live from New York, it's Saturday night. Welcome, Alpha Romero. Dude, I'm so happy to be on this damn stream with you. This is so fun, a Saturday night stream. I see you rocking the Code Red Do. It looks fantabulous. I'm ready to talk all things Remaking Romero with you tonight, buddy. It's going to be a fun show.
Yeah, man, I've been meaning to have you on for quite a while, and I was trying to think of a good topic to get you on here for, and I think this would be an interesting topic. It had been a while since I'd seen a number of these films, and I was kind of going back and forth, like, I really want to go back and rewatch some of them. Some of them I haven't even, or one of them I haven't even seen before. So I said, it'd be a good time to get Grande on, get his thoughts, kind of help me, guide me through these, because I think you probably like these films a little bit more than me, maybe minus one.
I know which one you're talking about too, but yeah, I would say so. I would say I wouldn't say I hate any of these except one of them. One of them has the hate that, and that's going to be fun when we get there. But yeah, no, this was interesting when you reached out. First of all, thank you for having me on. It's fun to work with you as always. I loved the '90s Romero in the '90s show we did. And I see you got the Iron City hat on right there, so that's awesome in and of itself. But this was an interesting topic. I would never have thought of this. I think this was a really good idea because most people would just think Night, Dawn, and Day remakes, but he also remade this gem right here. And I was like, I've got to be wearing my Crazies colors here tonight on not on Grande's Graveyard. I'm Alfred. Sorry. That's just a little bit of, whatever, just, playing by the habits here. But no, I appreciate you having me on. I'm actually excited. This is a fun, unique topic. And hi to everybody in the chat.
Yeah, what's going on, everybody in the chat? We got a couple people in here already. I had somebody come in and interesting. So Jay Bart, a couple days ago, he put this on here. The child zombies, and I guess he's referring to the cover art on the stream. It's got Romero holding the sign that says, zombies don't run or whatever. His response to that is the child zombies in Dawn of the Dead did in the airport/fuel station did. They bum rushed Peter. So thoughts on that?
I really don't. I'm guessing you're a Romero loyalist and thinking that you were with the slow zombies. I don't care if they run. I don't care if they walk. I care if your movie's good. That's really more where I'm at. I don't know where you fall in that whole argument, but I don't really. It doesn't matter to me. Granted, I tend to like more movies zombie wise that they do walk. It just happens to be that case, but I haven't seen, it's not like every zombie movie where zombies are running. I love Return of the Living Dead, and they're running a marathon in that movie. So
right. No, I've never really had an issue either way. I think it just depends on how the film itself is being portrayed. It's kind of like I love 28 Days Later. I think that's one of my all-time favorite horror films, and that's technically a zombie film just because of the way that it's presented. It's definitely a Romero-esque film.
Sure.
They're running that, and I think that's where the whole trend kind of started in the early 2000s, which would lead to like Dawn of the Dead. To me, they remade Dawn of the Dead with the idea of, hey, that 28 Days Later movie over in the UK really changed things. Let's do something like that over here. And
that and I think Shaun of the Dead is probably the two big movies that they were like, well, what if we put these two together? We'll try to do that, and then basically, big boom.
I think 28 Days Later, Shaun of the Dead, and to an extent, the Dawn remake probably played a role in George kind of becoming a pop culture icon during that time period, which is why Land of the Dead ended up getting made. It's why he kept making those, Diary of the Dead, Survival of the Dead. He was, this is a trivia question from like last week, but he had like a cameo role in a Disney cartoon in Phineas and Ferb, which I'd never even known.
Really?
Yeah. Like he plays a character called Dawn of the Dead, and he's a TV reporter, and it's George in cartoon form, and it's his voice, and he's like report because the title of the episode's Night of the Living Pharmacists.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, And then of course he would he had like stints and like I remember, what was it, Opie and Anthony, I think he was on that radio show for, he had a guest appearance on that. It was just all kinds of stuff during like the 2000s, and the like I remember specifically the moment when my little cousin Jarrett, who was like a gamer, he would play like Call of Duty and stuff like at an early age, and I remember he came up to me and he knew that I liked Dawn of the Dead and George Romero and stuff. And he came up to me and he was like, "How do you kill George Romero?" I was like, "What the fuck are you talking about? Like, how do you even know who that is? Like, you don't know." Like, he's just like, "Well, on my Call of Duty game, I guess in the Call of Duty game, there's like a side thing where George Romero is like the main boss villain
Yeah.
like really hard to kill." And he asked me that, and I was just like, I don't know what you're talking about. So I had to look it up, and I was like, holy shit, they put him in a video game now, and he's like the boss villain of like. So I think that like Shaun of the Dead, 20 Days Later, the Dawn remake kind of propelled George into like the pop culture sphere in the 2000s.
He did. I don't know if Universal gives him the 20 million to make Land if it wasn't for those three movies or a
Probably
combination of
not.
the three. I don't think that happens because I mean he was in direct to video land by Bruiser by 2000, and then you don't hear anything for 5 years, and then all of a sudden it's okay, $20 million, biggest budget he ever had to work to date. And he's got people like Dennis Hopper and John Leguizamo. Granted, I don't think I think Simon Baker stinks in that movie. But all of a sudden he's making a big budget movie. Like it just seemed to come out of nowhere. But you're right. It definitely seemed to be more like in pop culture after these movies. And then of course his the second part of the Dead saga, I guess, the last trilogy, the Land Diary Survival. So yeah, no, that's an interesting point. And I've got to check out this Phineas and Ferb thing. That's so cool.
Yeah, the clip's on YouTube. If you just type in George Romero in Phineas and Ferb, the little clip is there, and it's funny. Like I never even knew that existed, but I was like just bullshitting on YouTube, and I came across. I was like, "What is this?" So I was like, hey, "This would be a good trivia question for Trivia Tuesday." So that's what I did like last week. But yeah, I think that's why a lot of these remakes were getting made at the same time too. Because I think when the Dawn remake came out and it was as successful as it was, the name George Romero kind of had some cachet again in the 2000s, which is why Land of the Dead got made. I mean, and so like they were just it felt like they were just picking different Romero properties to remake. Day of the Dead, The Crazies, Night of the Living Dead 3D, which we're not going to talk about tonight, but maybe in the future we've discussed. But so yeah, but in terms of like just getting back to the original fucking topic, I mean we're just way off here.
Sorry.
But no, I think I went on a different tangent. I don't know. I've been thinking about George as a pop culture icon more here lately. I might do a stream on that at some point, just because it was kind of weird. Because in the 90s, nobody knew, he'd kind of disappeared after the dark half. Like people always talk about, or George would always talk about, like in the 90s, people just thought I died or something. Like it's like, oh, what happened to that guy that made the zombie movies back in the day? He must have died. Then he kind of came back in the 2000s, and it was, I don't know. I think it's an interesting topic, but yeah, I think in terms of running zombies, slow zombies, I don't think it matters. I think it just depends on how because I'll say this, in terms of like running zombie films, you mentioned it. Return of the Living Dead is a great one. 28 Days Later, the Dawn remake. I mean, I thought they did okay with that. Train to Busan. Have you seen that one? I think
that's great. Love Train to Busan.
But then again, you get to like the Day of the Dead remake, where you have not only running zombies, but leaping zombies and crawling on the ceiling zombies, and it's just like, what the they went too far at one point.
Don't forget the
vegetarian zombies. Yeah, I mean they just went too far at one point, but
yeah.
But yeah, I don't think it matters either way. I just think it's although I mean logically speaking, if the dead did come back to life, I think they would probably be a little slower than they would be,
Yeah, he has that great commentary in Diary when Ridley's walking into your ankles would break if can I just run out?
Exactly.
I love that. That's like such a Romero. Like I love that little like commentary in there right at the beginning of the movie. I was like, all right, Romero's back when I first saw Diary.
Let's see, Straight Edge Zombie, what's up? Good to see you.
Straight Edge too. Rock on, brother.
Robert Dobbins in the house. What's up? I was able to meet Robert at the Living Dead weekend in Evans City this year. We talked quite a bit. Him and his wife, they were super, super cool. Good to see you in here, man. He says 90s what I grew up on and love it. It's number 2 on my favorites list. I remember.
Hell yeah.
What was number 1 on your list? I can't remember. We went through this and I was just kind of like, huh? I think Day of the Dead may have been his number 1 in terms of Romero zombie films. Kids die too, unfortunately. Sometimes. I think, yeah. Night Dawn of the Dead. Kiki, please. That's a new name. Am I alive? Okay.
Yeah, you
Sorry,
kept freezing a little bit. You're good now.
Sorry. See, Kiki, please, new name in the chat tonight. I also love 28 Days Later. Yeah, 20 Days Later, I think, just completely changed, the zombie genre for the 2000s. Let's see, freaky movie. Let's see, Robert Dobbins. Morgan Stewart's Coming Home has George signing his book, The Zombies That Ate Pittsburgh. And it's an unknown film, but totally Romero adjacent. I believe it was you that, it was either you or somebody else that mentioned that on a stream not too long ago, Robert. And I went and found the trailer for that. And that's definitely a movie I've never, ever heard of, but it's one I feel like I need to track down. Have you ever heard of or seen Morgan Stewart's Coming Home? I think it's like an 80s film with, what's the kid's name? The John Cryer, I think, is the star of that.
Really?
Yeah.
One of the 2.5 men right there.
Yeah, exactly. One of the 2.5 men. But yeah, it's an 80s film with John Cryer in it. It's weird. Yeah. Robert says that was him. But before we get into the remakes and talking about these films, let's talk about your film a little bit. You're a filmmaker in your own right now. You just directed a short film. Directed, you wrote, produced, you performed the music for. I didn't even know that. Right. And you did the end theme on that, but you're man of 1,000. You're like Dean Malenko for filmmaking. You're the man of 1,000 jobs
holds,
there.
And you're
the
man
of 1,000 holds.
Holds. Hold number 2, arm bar.
But yeah, I've actually wanted to talk to you about it. Like, how did that come about? Like, just start from the beginning. Like, tell me about like the idea for it. Like, how did you come across, any kind of funding, or tell me about the origins of that. I'm curious to know.
I've written a lot over the years. I've written a lot of short stories, and I had a chance encounter. I was at a party late December last year. We're coming up on like the 1-year anniversary of how this all came to be. And I was at a party, and I had a chance encounter with somebody I hadn't seen in a long time. And he was like, man, I've directed a lot of plays up in New Paltz. It's like a upstate college. It's like, I always call it a hippie town. It's very hippie town, like a lot of hippie kids and shit. And he's like, oh, I directed some plays there. I met some wonderful stage actors. He's like, you write, right? And he said, you love movies. I said, yeah. He goes, would you ever think of directing like a feature? And I was like, man, I wouldn't be able to afford a real feature-length movie. I said a short I could totally fund. I could put out of my own pocket and do it, because like I usually like to be good and conservative and save my money and shit like that. And
so you funded it out of your own pocket then?
Out of my own pocket, yeah. Nobody helped. It was like a little over $1,400. It was just under $1,500, the whole thing. I wanted to make sure I paid the actors, although he was like, oh, you don't got to pay them. I'm like, yes, I do. I'm like, if they're going to come to work for me, I'm going to pay them. This is not right if I didn't. And I paid pretty much everyone except the person who did the score. That person, he refused. He was like, I'm just honored you thought of me. And he said, I'm not going to take any of your money. And I said, okay. I said, I appreciate it. I'll take the one freebie. But everyone else got paid. And we didn't have a permit. We went to, I won't say where because I don't want to ever get in trouble because we did not have permission to shoot where we were shooting. But we went ahead. I gave the script out. We worked on it, revised it, edited it down a little bit. Our goal was like 10 to 15 minutes, and the initial cut was like 17 minutes. And then we got it all the way down to around 10 and a half minutes. And I think it came out pretty good for the most part. I'm very happy with it. It was such a fun experience. If for not, I really enjoyed working with all the actors and actresses. I thought they just brought their best and their A game. And it's not like something they had a long time to prepare for. Like these people work their 9 to 5s, 8 to 5s, whatever. And, then came on Saturday nights. We shot it consecutively, real guerrilla. It was really Romero-esque, real guerrilla over a few weekends. And even to the point where it's called Down by the Bay, the end, I wanted to put the Rafi song Down by the Bay. And I actually filled out a whole thing. It was all his paperwork to get the rights to use it for the movie, and I offered them $500. So if they would have taken that, it would have been almost $2,000 to make the whole thing. And then they just refused. They didn't counter offer, nothing. And so I went back to the music guy. I'm like, shit. I'm like, what are we gonna do? He's like, grab the microphone. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, yeah. He says, you fucking sing it. He says, that's it.
That's what you got to do. Sometimes, I mean, shit. That's sometimes what you got to do. And so it turns out just fine. Like when I heard it, I was like, this sounds really good. It kind of sounds like Grande's singing it, but I don't think. So I asked you. I remember I asked you, and you were like, "Yeah, that's me." I was like, "Shit."
Yeah, it was a Romero moment. I was like, I don't have a choice. I said that I like, granted, would they have pushed? I don't know, but YouTube would have taken it down in a second.
Mm,
There's no doubt that it would have been flagged. So we got together, and he just, without missing a beat, he said, grab the microphone, start singing. And then they played the acoustic, so we couldn't, because the song is public domain. But I
right.
wanted the Rafi version because I think it's perfect. You hear the little kids in the back. It's a little bit haunting in a way. So I said, this might work. But yeah, no, I appreciate your comments and kind words. I know you liked Courtney. She, in my opinion, steals the whole thing. I even,
Yeah,
when I saw her.
I would say, hey, you need to do more of this. I don't maybe not fund it out of your own pockets. Maybe find some kind of financier. Find your Richard Rubenstein maybe to help maybe gather you a few bucks. But I definitely think, I mean, this was your first attempt at filmmaking, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
So I definitely think for a first time filmmaker, it plays really really well. Like a lot of the dialogue in it, I think it comes off very naturally. I don't know if it was written that way or if it was improv that way or directed that way or how that came across. But I think especially a lot of the around the fire pit stuff, some of that felt very natural. And I thought Courtney, what's her name?
Courtney Gilmore.
Courtney Gilmore. I thought she did a fantastic job with her dialogue part at the end of the film and some of the like body contortions and stuff she was doing. I thought, she played that perfectly. And I think your next one, you definitely need to give her a call because
I will.
That's
saw her,
that's your money right there, I think.
Yeah, I think she was great too. Like I would, if I ever do another, I would love her to be the lead. I even told her we did a premiere for it, like a night in the theater, because initially I wanted to do like short film festivals, and we didn't get the deadline. We had an issue in post where the guy editing the movie, unfortunately, he used the camera audio when he should have been using the boom mic audio. So that delayed us a month and a half. Otherwise, we would have been like at least attempted to go to festivals, and that didn't end up happening. So this, what my plan is this new year, I'm like, you know what? I'll private the video on YouTube because you have to when you submit to festivals. It can't be seen anywhere else, I guess.
Right.
So we'll private the video and then we'll try to get into festivals and we'll see from there. But that cost us, and I was like, I still want to do a night in the movies. So I called up a few local theaters and they were like, yeah, like it's going to be like X amount. I think it ended up being like 600 for the night. And we had a bunch of like a movie premiere. It was so much fun. And all the actors showed up, exception of like one. And man, they were all so grateful. They all had their families with them. Very emotional night. And the girl who was the lead, she hugged me with like tears. She was like, you ever do anything else, you need to call me. I was like, I will. I was like, I will absolutely call you. But no, it was cool seeing her she was like, I don't know, like just in awe. Like, it was really cool.
It's weird feeling seeing yourself on the big screen. I remember, so like when I was a teenager, like that's how I spent my weekends. Me, my friends, cousins. I was trying to be little George Romero in high school, and I was like, okay, on the weekends, like while everybody else is out partying, drinking, doing whatever, I'm like, I got my camera, and it's like, hey guys, we got this to shoot, and I would spend all week at school instead of doing schoolwork or anything like that. I'd just be planning out what we're shooting this week, writing some dialogue, planning different shots and stuff. So I did a film. It was 2006, 2007, something like that, and ended up getting accepted into the Kentucky Student Film Festival or something like that. So we all packed into like we borrowed somebody's van and packed like me, cousins, girlfriend, sister, parents, and drove up to Louisville and showed, watched the screening of the film. And it was just like weird just sitting there in the theater and watching the film with people and seeing if things worked that you wanted to, and of course the competition, we came in second. We missed out. There's some kid who did like this experimental film called Filter or whatnot. And my cousin, who is like the star of the film, who looks just like Joseph Gordon-Levitt, looks just like him. It's insane. But he's kind of a smart ass and stuff. So when we came in second, like TJ, as we were walking out, he's just like, man, that's bullshit. like like that movie was boring. That didn't even make sense. Ours had, had him jumping off roofs and stuff. It was just crazy. So that's how we spent our high school days back in the day, was shooting, making movies. So yeah, seeing yourself on a big screen with people and seeing how they react to it, it's the most nerve-wracking experience, but at the same time, it's completely gratifying.
I gotta ask, is there any way I could watch this student film? I'm so curious now.
Possibly.
Okay.
I'll shoot you a message on Facebook after we're
Yes.
done here.
Oh, I'm excited. I love how you still remember you lost to the movies and the title, like filter. Like, I know there's definitely salt in the wound if you remember the title almost 20 years later.
Well, see, I remember because I remember watching it and thinking like, this is probably going to win because it's very artsy fartsy, experimental, yada yada, and and when we lost to it and that one won, it was like we all just looked at each other. It was like, it's fucking rigged, man. It's rigged. but yeah, I'll definitely shoot you a message after we're
Please
done
do.
here.
I've got to see that. That's amazing. But yeah, no, I definitely, for now, I feel like I just want to enjoy this one. We'll try the festivals, and then I want to get back to work because I have other ideas and I'm excited to get to them. But for now, I'm just still on the high, and it performed really well on YouTube. So totally humbled, man. The whole thing was really humbling.
Yeah, I think you're off to a good start, man. I put anybody wanting to check it out, it's down by the bay. I put a link to it down in the description if you guys want to check it out. It's on Grande's channel. There's a link to Grande's channel as well. Make sure you head over there, give him a like and a subscribe and all that fun YouTube stuff, and help our boy out. And I'm waiting for the next one. You better do another one, damn. Am I in? Am I in?
Yeah, it was a little bit freezy, but I hear you.
Okay. So yeah, we'll talk about your channel here. How'd you start with your channel? Like, because I know for me, like starting a YouTube channel was just out of I was a huge fan of the Dead Pit guys. I was watching the Dead Pit channel and their live streams all the time. I'm like, it looks kind of fun just to sit there and bullshit and talk about films you love and stuff. And at the same time, it was just like, I'm at this age where I have, a family, I have a kid, I have things going on. It's like I don't have a lot of time to go out and mingle and make friends and find people with common interests and stuff. So it's like, I'll do a YouTube channel. I'll come on here, do videos and streams and just, blurt out whatever's in my head and my theories and thoughts. And Romero is the thing that I know and love the most. So that's kind of what I went after. What inspired you to start Grande's Graveyard?
That's a great question. I started the channel itself. It was just my name in like high school. I just started the channel and I just would do like fun things and kids would be like, oh, you should do this, you should do this. And that was all it was. It was a lot of BS. Those videos are mostly deleted. There's a couple of them I keep just for fun's sake, just to kind of remember like, oh, remember that in high school, that embarrassing video? There it is. It's still here. It's still up there. But I was in college and I didn't go away for school. Like I worked, I stayed home. And I worked to pay off my college. So I still I would go to school from 12 to 4. I would work like 6 to overnight. And then I was just kind of like, damn, like I wish I could do something like a hobby on the side other than working and going to school and the whole nonsense. And they were just reopening where I went to college, a radio station like on campus. And I went in there and I was like, oh my God, I would love to do a show. And initially, funny enough, I came to them because I figured they would never want a horror movie show. So I went and I said, I could do fantasy football. I'll do like who you should pick, the waiver wire pickups, and how you should draft and strategy. It never would have lasted. I mean, there's only so much you could do. And there's only 4 months or so that you can really do it. Mm-hmm. And they were like, that's a cute idea, but we have like 8 sports shows. They were like, what do you got? Can you do anything pop culture? And I said, I love horror movies. It's my favorite thing in the world. And they were like, horror movies. And I remember they like all looked at each other. They were like, what?
The common response.
When I remember they were sitting at a little table and they all looked at each other like, what is wrong with this kid? And I was like, I think it would be good. And they were like, well, what would it be? Like, explain the format. I said, well, I could come on for like an hour every week and pick a topic and just talk. And they were like, alone? You're not going to have anybody with you? And I was like, no, do I need anybody with me? And they were like, I mean, so they basically ended up giving me the green light. I did it and I just became addicted to it. I was like, oh, I love this. And then of course, once college was wrapping up, I was like, I'm gonna go into the real world, work at a normal 9 to 5 job, and I really want to do this on the side. So I started doing it every Thursday night live at 8:05, and I do topics, and it just kind of gradually grew. I think I've been doing the show almost 3 years now. It's around there. It was over 200 episodes, I think, of Grande's Graveyard, and I don't know. It's just a lot of fun. I've met so many wonderful, colorful people through it. I've had so many fun discussions, and I always try to keep it fresh. Like if I'm doing Italian Jolly one week, the next week I want to do splat stick, late 90s Japanese movies or whatever, like anything to just keep it different. And there's been like Video Nasty series and the like versus series that I've done. Those have been a lot of fun. And I took big inspiration from Dead Pit. I was a big caller of theirs. If you listen to any of the old Dead Pit shows when they were taking calls, I was calling, and I'm in like middle school when I'm calling them, because I'm rather young compared to those guys. So I would call them in like elementary and middle school, call them on the phone and talk horror
That's
movies.
hilarious.
You could totally, if you pick like any episode from 2010 to 2015, you totally will hear me on the call-in shows. And they were just always so nice to me and were a big inspiration. I was like, I love their chemistry. I love this. I love this dynamic. And to me, it's like, that always gave me something to shoot for. And I know I would never reach that pinnacle, but you always have to have something to shoot for. And I just love Dead Pit. So they were my big inspiration. And then I just kind of love doing this, man.
Yeah, I actually didn't discover Dead Pit until a little later on. It was maybe a couple of years ago. I was just on YouTube and I just saw one of their live streams and I was watching. I was like, these guys are country as hell. Like I can't hardly like I'm from Kentucky, but I'm from Western Kentucky. See, like Western Kentucky is a completely different type of Kentucky than Eastern Kentucky.
Yep.
So I'm like watching. I'm like, man, these guys sound like country bumpkins. It's like I don't know about this, but that's more I watch. I'm like, these guys know what they're talking about. Like they know their shit. Like they're very like they know horror. And it was just entertaining. It was funny as shit. And I was just, it was like, so I got hooked on that. So then from there, I just was like, I'm going to try to do something like that just to get it out. Like I said, because it's like, you can't talk about Romero at work or, my fiance who I see is in the chat already tonight.
I was wondering who that was. I was like, is that Brock Purdy's woman? Like I see the
No, that's my woman.
There you go.
Good to see you, Jade. Glad she's in here supporting. She's curious. She was like, who the hell are you talking to tonight? But yeah, it just kind of drove me to kind of want to do the same thing. And it's like I said, you can't talk about it with most anybody. So I'm going to come on here and talk to myself. And if there are other people that are interested in, discussing it too, that's that's a plus. That's kind of the whole idea. That's why I wanted to do it. So, but yeah, let me check. There's a couple of new chat members other than my fiance in here. Super Spurg. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Is a cat. I was wondering what we were talking about. Filled him in. I was on talking about your film. Okay, I think that's what we're about caught up. Other than Jade over here, but so yeah, this is a Romero channel. This is what we talk about. I know that Dawn of the Dead is your favorite film.
It is. It's right here. Give you a little Grande detour right there.
Nice. Right next to Maniac. I was on your channel the other night. I was talking about Maniac and how much I love that movie. I love Maniac. That's probably my favorite slasher of all time. And speaking of remakes, have you seen the Maniac remake?
I have, and I actually didn't mind it. I was shocked.
I actually really liked it. I thought like captured like atmosphere and on all that of the original. Like the score I think is amazing in the remake. So yeah, just speaking of remakes and talking about Maniac, but let's talk about Dawn. Was the first time you remember seeing Dawn of the Dead? Like, and how old were you? What were you into at the time?
Wow, to preface, I saw Night of the Living Dead at like 9 years old, and I saw it on television. It was late. And it got me. I was so into the movie. And I always remember the ending and how cold it was, even though another one for the fire, how something hot can be so cold.
Good play on words there.
I remember being like, it was one of those, I kind of just sat back. I was like, wow. I was like, that really was something else. I just thought it was so well done. And I went to Hollywood Video at the time, rented the Divimax DVD of Dawn of the Dead because it was, oh, it's the sequel, it's the sequel. Even though I thought a sequel, it would be some kind of recurring character, some kind of or mention of Ben or Judith O'Dea, like something. But that really, it's not that. It's just you open up your, the shit's hitting the fan and it's grown and all this stuff. Because at the end of Night of the Living Dead, what people forget, it seems like everything's under control. Like the original Night of the Living Dead, when it's ending, it's like, all right, we're fine. Like,
I mean, Bill Cardille says at the end, it's like, let them know everything seems to be under control.
Yeah, that's. I remember being like, okay, so how are they gonna like I remember going in so anticipated, and I never could have prepared myself for the movie I got. I just loved it from the minute I saw it because it's the most grand movie ever made. Like, it has horror, it has comedy, it has drama, it has action, it has Western elements. It's in some ways a biker film. It's in some ways like a character, just a film about friendship. It has the consumerism. It has the comic book aesthetic of the blue zombies and the Crayola red gore, and Tom Savini pulling off all these wonderful, as he would call them, magic tricks. And how are you going to pull this off? How are you going to do this, that, the other? Ken Foree, to me, his lead performance is tremendous. I love Scott Reiniger as Pete. I'm sorry, Scott Reiniger as Roger. Love him in the movie. I just thought it was the perfect movie. It was the perfect length, had hit all the right elements, and I was like, man, it's gonna be tough topping this movie right now. And over the years, I saw your Empire Strikes Back and your Godfathers and all these wonderful movies, but I always feel there's no movie more grand than Dawn. So it was always my favorite movie. It really was. I absolutely love it. I wish I could go back and rewatch it for the first time again. It's just one of those movies that it's magic to me.
Yeah, I often wonder, like, if I could go back and if I could just erase my memory and see Dawn of the Dead for the first time again, how would I feel today, like now? Which I don't know, I would be a completely different person now if I hadn't seen Dawn of the Dead. But like, if I could go back and be like, let's say I really liked horror, I liked a lot of Romero stuff, but I hadn't seen Dawn of the Dead for whatever reason. I wonder how I would react now to it. But it's kind of fun. Like, I know they just played Dawn of the Dead in 2D in theaters here recently at the Regal Cinemas, and going to see it last year in 3D, going to see it in theaters with some people and trying to pick out, like, okay, that person's never seen this before. I'm going to kind of keep an eye on them, see how they react and respond to certain things. I try to live vicariously through the other people in the theater sometimes. And that's, I feel like it still holds up. I think people still have a good time with it. They still react in all the right spots. Like, there was one of the screenings of the 3D screenings last year. There was a little kid, a little boy there with his dad, and he was watching it, and as we were leaving the theater, he was just talking about how cool that mall was. And man, why don't we have a mall that cool? And that was so cool, And you remember that, remember that part where the guy, fell off the motorcycle and blah, blah, I'm just like, I want to be that kid again. I want to be like, wow, this is, just rediscovering something awesome.
Could you imagine seeing it in theaters when it was released? Like, that would be.
There's an audio. It was on YouTube for a while, and I can't find it anymore. But there was actually an audio recording that somebody took in a theater back in 1979, I believe, during a screening of Dawn of the Dead, and you can hear like people screaming and people laughing and all this other stuff. I don't know whatever happened to it. I remember somebody posted it in one of the Facebook Dawn of the Dead groups, and I don't know what happened to it. But yeah, I'm sure it was, because think about me. You talk about how grand Dawn of the Dead is and how it's a little bit of everything. Like, it's extreme horror at times, but it's also very light and comedic at times. But it's also it's like everything rolled into one. And like, I've tried doing this in the past, but can you think of any other films, like especially horror films at the time, like that had done that before Dawn of the Dead, really, to that extent?
There's no way. I think that's what makes it so special. Like, I think Creepshow in a lot of ways comes close because, again, you have the comic book aesthetic, you have horror in spots, but you have the funny stuff with Adrienne Barbeau, and like, you have a good balance there too. But no, like, to me, it's that's what makes it so great. Like, a lot of, like, okay, there will always be debates. What's better, Halloween or Nightmare on Elm Street? What's better, Black Christmas or Halloween? What's better, Texas Chainsaw Massacre or this other movie? Like, there's nothing to me that can really rival Dawn of the Dead because there's nothing really like it. It's just such it's its own thing. Even Day and Night to me are completely opposite spec. Like Night is like
Day and Night.
Yeah, they really are.
Opposite.
Night is a ghoul film, which is, the movie that literally gave birth to a genre and was very much of its time, the late 1960s. And then Day is almost like, I always say Day of the Dead is the greatest stage play, zombie stage play underground, with all these fun over-the-top performances. And I'm running this monkey farm, Frankenstein. And I think all three of them are so great for different reasons. But Dawn is just the mecca for me. I don't think before or after this you've ever had a movie quite like Dawn that hits as grand as it does.
Yeah, and especially for the budget that they had to make it and what they accomplished. Like, to me, I've always said that Dawn of the Dead is, if not one of the greatest accomplishments in independent filmmaking ever.
It
just
is
for the budget and just how they were able to pull off a lot. I mean, having a real bike gang driving through the mall, like a real shopping mall, is just like unheard of now. You could never do that now.
And to make it feel as global as George did, like when you really think about it, you don't see much. You see the Wagon Station, you see the apartment complex, you see a field, and you see a mall. That's really a majority of what you see in Dawn of the Dead. Yet it feels like it is global pandemic. Like he made it feel so big, even though it was so small. And I love in the Dead Will Walk documentary, The Making of Dawn of the Dead, Christine Romero, she says, like, George always is going to write his vision and find a way. And I think that was what made Romero one of the best, if not the best ever, is he could make a lot out of nothing. And that's why, like, when I always see Land of the Dead, I'm like, he got the money there and it just didn't hit the same. It almost felt like, I don't want to see a Simon Baker in here. I want to see some weird, stage actor from Pittsburgh that you saw and you were in the front row and there were 13 other people in the whole stage house. And you said him, Amplis, you said Cardell, you said, whatever you wanted to say. I think that's what made George so great is how he could make a lot out of nothing. I think he's really a legend.
Well, I mean, we'll talk about it here in a minute, but with Land of the Dead, I mean, even the budget that he had for Land of the Dead, while it was his biggest budget by far that he ever had, still a fairly small budget in comparison to pretty much all of these remakes. Pretty much every, other than the Tom Savini Night of the Living Dead remake, the other three all had bigger budgets than Land of the Dead. But to me, even Land of the Dead still feels bigger. I mean, think about it. If I asked you which film had a bigger budget, Land of the Dead or the Day of the Dead remake,
I would think Land of the Dead, but I'm guessing now it's Day of the Dead.
That Day of the Dead remake had, so the Land of the Dead's budget, I was actually crunching numbers earlier because I'm a nerd and I was just doing some show prep. There's some fun trivia here before we get into these remakes. I was just looking at these budgets. I was like, God damn, this is insane. So here's a fun trivia fact. The budget for Land of the Dead was $16 million. The budget for the Day of the Dead remake was $18 million.
Wow.
How they got that movie out of $18 million, I have no fucking idea. I don't know
either.
where that money went. I guess they had to pay Nick Cannon something, I guess, to have him in the movie. But that blew my mind when I saw that.
That I didn't even know that. That is insanity. The Crazies remake, I would think, had a lot behind it because I know they had given that director a lot to make Sahara, which was a giant bomb at the time. Mm-hmm. But I don't know the numbers here. I didn't look in box office wise.
I got the numbers here. I think here's an interesting one. So the budget for Dawn of the Dead remake. I can't even hardly fucking say that. There's a Dawn of the Dead. The Dawn of the Dead remake. The budget for that was $26 million.
Okay.
The budget for all of George's Dead films in total, $25 million.
Wow. Isn't that insane?
It's crazy to think about what George is able to accomplish with such small budgets and so, little time and just that's, one of the reasons why we love George is what he's able to do. 3 perfect
movies and literally of the 25 million, 16 went to one of them. So that's like, wow.
It's crazy to think about. Robert Dobbins says he just got a new Romero tattoo recently. You'll have to We'll have to get you on the stream here. Maybe you'll be my second guest. We'll we'll show off some of your Romero tattoos because he's got all kinds. He was showing me both arms, and I think he had one somewhere where he couldn't show me actually.
A Romero sleeve. We got to see that.
Yeah,
Cool.
he's working on it. 1911 guitar dude in the house. What's up, man? Nice posters. Glad to see some Sleepaway Camp love too. He says, like how Night 90 gave us the alternate ending to make it Savini's own. It's my favorite Romero remake for so many reasons. It really needs a 4K release soon. Well, sir, I think you're in luck because I think there is a Night 90 4K release coming soon. I'm about 90% sure. According to Tom Savini himself, there is. So we'll
there you go.
Straight from the horse's mouth. Nige is free. That's a new name, I believe. Finally been able to make a live stream without falling asleep. It's 3:40 a.m. here. Great work as usual. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. AJ's Happy Fun Time channel.
Hey.
Happy Saturday, dudes. What's up, AJ?
AJ's great people.
So let's see. All right. So I guess we can go ahead and get into it. We'll start looking at some of these remakes, and I guess we're going to go chronologically here. We'll start right from the beginning. 22 years after the release of the original Night of the Living Dead, Tom Savini got tapped to direct the remake in 1990. With a budget of $4.2 million, it grossed its budget, probably at least broke even, if not lost a little bit. I think the final box office number on that was about $5.8 million. It was released October 19th, 1990, starring Tony Todd, Patricia Tallman, Tom Towles, Bill Moseley. It was like a who's who of anybody that was in, horror films at the time. Although Tony Todd hadn't done Candyman yet. This was kind of his first big leading role. First and foremost, do you remember the first time you saw Night of the Living? Did you see Night 90 before or after the original, and what did you think of it?
Definitely after, and I really, to this day, feel kind of the same way. I always liked it. I thought it was really good, and I thought other than, I would say probably of the four we're talking tonight, it improved things from the original movie that I was like, wow. Like, if I had to say any knock on the original Night of the Living Dead, it's some of the acting. Like, other than Dwayne Jones, you could tell they weren't actors. Like, you just tell. And then you get Patricia Tallman, who was a pro and had been in Night Riders and had worked with Savini even on Tales from the Dark Side just a year or two before this. Always loved her. Beautiful woman, and she brings a great, like, strong toughness to that Barbara character as opposed to the Judith O'Dea, where I always felt it was kind of just like Bill Moseley, I know he's not in it much, but it was always cool to see Bill Moseley in there. Tony Todd as Ben. I mean, if you're going to get anybody to replace Dwayne Jones, that's the guy you get. To me, Tony Todd, one of the great all-time screen presence actors. Just love how that guy, what he brings to the screen. I just love that guy. Tom Towles, I always remember in Henry. He's the sidekick in Henry, and I always was more scared of him than I was of Michael Rooker. I always thought he was the scariest thing in Henry, but I thought he was great as the asshole Cooper, and I thought it was great. It felt very homemade, like the original trilogy did. Like, it felt very much. We shot it in Pittsburgh. You even have one guy wearing a Steelers hat, which I'm like, oh, there you go.
As well, it's an Iron City. I think he had an Iron City beer sweatshirt on too.
That's right. Yeah, it feels very Pittsburgh. George wrote the screenplay, so it feels very close to home. It's like it isn't directed by Romero, but it definitely has some Romero flavor in there, a lot more than the other three will. And I don't know, I always quite liked it. I thought that some of the changes they made, I won't get all of them now, but I always quite liked it. I can't tell you the first time I saw it. I don't remember that distinctly, but I definitely saw it after the original. So I don't know. I quite like it. And I know we talked about it a little bit on Mike's channel, but upon rewatch, I know you said you're a little bit more fond on it this time. Let me hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so like when we originally talked about it on your channel for the Romero in the 90s stream, I had rewatched it on the big screen. They played it a couple of years ago at Living Dead Weekend in the theater where the JCPenney's used to be. They had a screening of Night 90 there, and I remember watching it and a little underwhelmed when I watched, because it had been a while since I had seen it, and I was just like, it's just not the original, man. There's just something missing about it. There's something missing about it. And then I rewatched it again. I was just like, there's just something missing about it. And I don't know if it's because it's like I mentioned, I don't know if it's because I just now went back and rewatched all these remakes and
Hmm.
and just watched the Day of the Dead remake a couple of days ago. But rewatching it today, I just actually watched it just a few hours ago. Um, I like it a lot more than I think I gave it credit for. I think it's the Patricia Tallman character. I always had an issue with the way that they just kind. So the original Barbara character, I never had an issue with because I always felt like that character was more childlike than she was in the original, where she's kind of, I mean, they're kind of saying it in the original where it's like they're coming to get you, Barbara, and she's kind of like, Johnny, stop it. The Johnny and Barbara character in the original almost feel like kids. They're almost like children. It's kind of like Argento, Suspiria, where
Yeah.
he pretty much wrote all those characters as children. I always kind of felt like Barbara and Johnny were kind of kids, basically. So in the remake, they kind of made the Barbara character, they made her stronger and, made her adjust to the world, a lot quicker than Judith O'Day's character did. And it always rubbed me the wrong way, but then it kind of dawned on me today. For the first time, I think I understood because this was written by George as well. This is the only remake on here that George actually wrote the screenplay for the remake. Because basically, the whole idea for the reason why they were making Night of the Living Dead 90 to begin with, because I mean, we're talking about 1990. This was not a huge time for remakes and horror, even. Horror wasn't even that hot at the time.
Yeah.
But it came to a point where, of course, with the copyright issue with Night of the Living Dead, Russ Streiner, John Russo, the whole Latent Image crew were basically not making any money off of the success of the original Night of the Living Dead. So the basic idea of them remaking Night of the Living Dead was to try to make some kind of money off of the name Night of the Living Dead. So, of course, George wrote the screenplay. It was produced by, Russ Streiner, John Russo, and it was shot in Pittsburgh. I mean, it's very, Patty Tallman's in the film. It's like you said, it's a very Romero feeling film. But the thing that I got today for the first time in watching it, of course, in the original Night of the Living Dead, there's two warring sides. There's two warring ideas, two warring opinions. Do we go down in the cellar and board it up and just wait it out until help comes, or do we board up, the windows? It's Ben versus Harry Cooper.
Yeah.
Those are your two options. In the remake, Romero threw in a third option. Is Ben right? Is Harry Cooper right? No, they're probably both wrong. The person who's right is Barbara in the remake. So you have three sides. Do you stay, board up the windows and all that? Do you go to the cellar, or do you do what Barbara says and just say, they're fucking slow, we can just go right by them, we can get out of here if we're careful? But they're too busy fighting amongst themselves, and it feels like the Ben character, Tony Todd, which Tony Todd does a fantastic job in the remake, I agree. They're too busy fighting amongst themselves, and they're too busy trying to be right. They're too busy trying to fight for their own points of view, that they kind of dismiss the Barbara character, even though she's the one who's actually right in the end. So it's kind of George's way of saying that Cooper was wrong, Ben was wrong. The actual right thing to do would have just been, just go, leave. Like, you can get by them if you're careful, and if you leave early enough before they all start swarming on the house. Because, you start banging and yelling and screaming and boarding up windows. I mean, you're going to draw the attention of all these zombies. So I like that. That was the first time I actually kind of caught that, where it was like George was kind of saying, okay, we're going to introduce a third option. And then Savini's direction, I think the biggest issue that I had with Savini's direction on this, I felt like he was trying to do a little too much for a first-time director. And I mean, a lot of his ideas were great, and he often talks about that Night 90 is flawed, and he's not happy with it because he wanted to do so much more. And I think he was too busy worried about like trying to, these subtle little things like the Mary Celeste sign on the front of the house. And it's just like, if you're a first time director and you're dealing with all these things, I mean, you just directed a film. There's all these unseen issues that you're going to be hit with. I think if you're too busy worried about the little details, you kind of miss the big picture. And I think that's where I feel like if Tom could go back and redirect that, I think he kind of understands that now. That maybe focus on more bigger picture than a lot of the smaller details. But That's just some of the stuff I picked up on.
No, I would completely agree with that. And like I know he had directed some really good Tales in the Dark Side episodes. Like I mentioned, like Inside the Closet, that's the episode
I'm
like
looking forward to it.
remember. That's
I haven't
the
seen
one. Yeah, and you should. It's a great episode of TV. And of course, he had done Family Reunion with Patricia Tallman just 2 years before this movie comes out. She's the lead in that episode. That I like that episode even better. You know, I always thought that was a really good one. And I've seen people say that Night 90 feels like a feature-length Dark Side with a little bit more money. And it's like, yeah, I mean, most Dark Sides take place all in one location. Night 90, pretty much all in one location. You're in the little house. But I do think he did a pretty good job. And I think that a lot of the Romero themes that are in the screenplay, they really work. Like, I love the whole thing with the gas pump key. Now, this partially is in the original movie, but they take it the extra step here where it's like, you know, somebody should be looking around for the key, whatever the hell. You have the whole thing with the gas pump again. In this movie, of course, when he shoots at the lock, it blows up, like I guess how it would in reality, which I know some people have had. I'm like, I've never had an issue with that at all. Like that never bothered me. But, you know, whatever. They have the scene towards the end where Tony Todd's sitting in the cellar and he looks as the light's kind of dimming and you hear the radio, you see that he sees the key and he starts laughing. And that, to me, that's Romero 101. It's like, we were arguing this whole time. You literally had two people down there that easily could have saw this key. But again, it was our failure to communicate and hear, and thus we are consumed and conquered by the zombies out there. That's Romero 101. And I think that is so prevalent here, way more prevalent here than any of these other three movies we're going to talk about tonight. Like, you definitely have George Romero feel, and it's in that family. And I thought Tom did a good job. Like, I honestly, when I first heard he was the director, my instinct was he's just going to special effects. He's just going to throw like, can I top Day of the Dead? Can I top, you know, The Burning and the Prowler and Maniac and all these movies where he threw a lot of special effects at you? I thought there would be a special effects gore reel because but again, that wasn't his job here. He was the director. So he had so much more on his plate. And like you said, maybe the little things made him miss the big picture. Maybe that would have been a direction to go. But I don't know if that would have worked for A Night of the Living Dead. Like, do you think if you had gone with that approach of like what Day of the Dead's finale, I guess, with the gore galore and all those great, wonderful practical effects, in my opinion, Savini's magnum opus is the ending of Day of the Dead. I just love that stuff. But would that have worked here with this small story in this one location? Or do you think he did the right thing going with the old school kind of Romero themes and just keeping it simple?
I think I think he would have liked it to be a little bit more gory than it was, but at the time in the night, like especially in 1990, the MPAA was just not cool with it.
Yeah.
Like, they had gone through the slasher craze in the 80s, and then they just said, you know, that no more of that. So I think he would have liked it, but I know there's a lot of lost footage out there, a lot of deleted scenes and stuff where they had to cut a lot of the gore, kind of like in Leatherface, Chainsaw 3.
Yep.
A lot of the gore in that had to be cut out, and that was 1990 as well. I think he would have liked it to have been a little bit more gory, but I've also heard Tom say quite a bit, which is funny to hear from Tom Savini of all people. I've heard Tom say before, like, sometimes the best effect is the effect that you don't see. It's the effect that you make up in your head. It's like, if you can blow up a head and show it on film and be like, okay, well, that's what it looks like. Or you can insinuate that you're blowing up a head and then your mind does the rest. It fills in the blanks. So I think Tom wanted it to be a little bit more bloody and gory than it was, but at the same time, I think he also wanted to kind of just theater of the mind, I think is what he calls it, to where insinuate, you know, certain things and just let the viewer kind of piece it together in their head, which, and like I said, and at the same time, the MPAA was also cracking down, and you kind of had to at that point.
Sure. This movie was a big victim of it too. Sleepaway Camp 3, Friday 13th Part 7, Texas Chainsaw 3. They were all that's a good point. I didn't even think of that, but you're right. That was the MPAA in 89, like 88 to 90, 91. They were just not having it, man. You just couldn't be gory anymore.
Yeah. What would you say? When did they lighten up? Because now, I mean, goddamn, you can on TV, primetime TV on a Monday night, you can cut somebody's head off.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question because the slasher movie really was dead. Like it was not dead too long after this. Like Freddy was dead, Jason was going to hell, Michael Myers was, in limbo because they were, changing companies and shit. So a lot of the big name slashers were dead. The movies you had to come out in between there were like Hellraiser 3, which
Hmm.
didn't do much business. I think that was a Miramax movie. They were trying to make him the next Freddy Krueger. It just didn't work. I don't mind the movie, but it didn't work. And then Chainsaw 3 made no money and just horror wasn't happening. I think that's really probably why. And then by the time it was happening again, it was like, yeah, why not? It's been a long enough time. Maybe that's what I don't know though.
I think that definitely has something to do with it. I think if a film's if a certain genre or a certain film isn't bringing in the cash, then it's easier for people like the MPAA and stuff to say, no, we're not doing that because, and it's easier for studios to say, okay, we're not going to do that because they're. But I think when, what would you say, like Scream, I guess was fairly bloody at the time, but anything before that you can think of that was kind
Nothing
of
graphic though, like you were seeing in Maniac. Nothing
right.
graphic like you were seeing what the movie Savini was a part of. Like nothing went to the point where the burning when the guy gets his three fingers chopped off and just didn't really have that for a really long while. I would say you're talking after 2000 by the time you start getting movies like that again. It's
Yeah,
just
that's true. Yeah, that because I mean Blair Witch had nothing in it. Um, and then I guess the slashers like Scream and you know uh, I Know What You Did Last Summer and Valentine and that whole like
the neo
small
slashers, yeah.
yeah those weren't too gory. I mean I guess they were bloody, but I mean you think of like the Halloween H2O and that time period too, like nothing major there. So yeah, I guess it was kind of early 2000s, that Eli Roth era,
Yeah,
type of
Saw, the
yeah.
direct-to-video stuff, like Wrong Turn 2, like stuff like that started finally. It was like, holy crap, he cut a lady in half. I just saw her innards. Like it's been 15 so years. Like it's just kind of what happened. That's because the Neo movies, they were just so gimmicky. It was like, okay, let's get
Mhm.
a bunch of good-looking teens, we'll put them in black t-shirts, put them on the cover, have them look into the camera. That's really it. I mean, that was the Neo slasher movement. It wasn't about gore. It was all about being hip and being with the times and keeping up with the times. It just, I
Right.
don't know, it was a weird time for horror, it really was.
Yeah. A good one around that time though that came out. I don't know if you're a fan of The Faculty or not, but I love The Faculty.
Love I have the VHS over here somewhere. I love the Faculty. One of my
I
favorites.
I remember seeing that for the first time. I was over at my cousin's house. It was like New Year's Eve or something like that, and I was like 12, 13 or something like that. We're watching it, and I'm just like, this is the fucking wildest, fucking craziest movie I've ever seen. It's just like it's got like John Stewart in it. It's got
Yeah,
fucking the T-1000, Robert Patrick's in it. Like I was just like, what a cast! Like Piper Laurie's in it. Like
Salma
great
Hayek.
cast. Selma Hayek.
Yeah.
And yeah, I fucking love the fact. I don't think that's one that gets talked about
I
enough
love that.
anymore.
To me, yeah, that's way better than the ones that get talked about. I watched that over I Know What You Did Last Summer 10 times
Oh
or any of
yeah,
those.
oh yeah. That's an easy choice for me. Subjective, perspective, collective. Dirk's in the house. What's up, man? What's happening? Let's see. Night 90's pretty solid. Let's see, he says, I remember Siskel and Ebert shit all over Night 90, saying it should have been in black and white.
Really?
Yeah. I've been watching a lot of Siskel and Ebert stuff on YouTube here lately, and some of their takes, like I watched them, they were doing, it was a video of all Siskel and Ebert reviews of James Cameron stuff and just like hearing them talk about like Terminator when it first came out or reviewing Aliens when it came out. And it's just like, man, this doesn't age well. They were completely off base with some of those because
Yeah, and I know they famously like Ebert gave Dawn, oh, it's the best horror movie ever, and then shat on Day. And
yeah,
then I don't see how could you shit like I don't understand if okay, if his big problem with Day was like some of the psychology with Bub having the gun and some of the gore. That what is wrong? There's nothing wrong with the psychology in this movie, and there's nothing over the top with gore. I don't see what someone's problem would be, especially a film critic. I don't understand.
I just think at that point they were just kind of on somewhat of a crusade against ultra violent, gory horror films in general. Like they just any slasher or horror film that came out at that time, they were just like. But Dawn of the Dead, you think when Dawn of the Dead came out, there wasn't really anything like we were talking about, nothing really like it. So they kind of caught on, and there was a big message behind it, which hey, Roger Ebert's pretty cool when it comes to horror, sci-fi stuff. Like he's usually like he'll say like some of the violence is a little over the top, but I still like it. I'll still give it a thumbs up. But then you got Gene Siskel, who just like anything is just uber offensive, and I can't. I just couldn't even sit there and watch this. I just wanted to throw up. But even he
Yeah.
gave Dawn a thumbs up, so it was a very rare thing. I think they gave Halloween 2 thumbs up. But yeah, there's just a lot of the reviews. You just look back and you're like, wow. But I mean, Roger Ebert didn't. He hated Night of the Living Dead when he first saw the original review for Night of the Living Dead. He
A lot
didn't
of
like
people,
it.
a lot of people do. A lot of people don't like Night of the Living Dead now. Like I feel like a lot of people now they're like, oh, it's terrible. I'm like, what? Like I just
Yeah, I
completely
don't
don't
know.
get it. But I don't know.
Yeah, I don't get it either. I guess I every time I watch it, I like pick up on something. That's any Romero film though, but like just watching it at the screening at Living Dead weekend again, last month or whatever, um, just why it makes you fall in love with it all over again because you're just like it was just so different. It's like at the time, like there's just nothing else like it that came out around that time, and just the stuff with like it's going back to the night 90. Well, I think that's one thing that I really missed, and it always kind of threw me off about Night 90 in comparison to the original, is just the lack of like the TV broadcasts and just kind of the radio broadcasts, and like a lot of the story of Night of the Living Dead is told through the radio broadcasts and the TV broadcasts, and people reacting and responding. Go to these rescue stations, and here's all the information. This is what's happening, in
Yeah,
Washington
yeah,
D.C. and yeah, exactly. And there's like a little bit of that in the Night remake, but I just didn't think like I just felt like they kind of missed the boat on that a little bit. But at the same time, I also think Night 90 is a little bit of a different film than the original in that aspect, to where it's more about the conflict going on inside the house as opposed to the conflict going on outside the house, really.
yeah. If there's one thing he missed, it's not as scary or atmospheric as the original. Like that's the real, to me, the big thing he missed. What he got right was I think he just got a much better cast to work with, and I think that stuff's really amplified. Like I love towards the end where Patricia Tallman, she's seeing what's going on. It's actually not too dissimilar to what's happening at the end of Diary of the Dead. I'm always like, geez, I feel like Romero saw this and was like, I got to do my own version of this sometime. And it's basically the end of Diary of the Dead where she
Yeah.
says, Patricia Tallman says, they're us and we're them. And the hit guy goes, what? And she's like, nothing. Like, you're not going to get it if I told you anyway. And then I think Diary of the Dead is like, are we worth saving? You tell me. It's basically the same.
Yeah, I didn't even notice
ending.
that. I didn't even think of that. But yeah, it is a pretty similar ending with the zombie strung up and then the redneck shooting the zombie. And yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
even think of that.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Like I think it's a really good remake. To me, I would say it's if I had to do like a top 10 horror movie remake, this would easily make it for me. I think it's damn good from top to bottom. I agree. I do think Savini, it was a little bit rough around the edges, but I guess that was to be expected. It just, I'd rather it be in his hands than in, somebody else's. I will say that.
Brad
I think
Anderson's.
it's far worse.
What are your thoughts on Twilight of the Dead that's supposedly coming out soon with Brad Anderson from did Session 9? He's directing.
I love Session 9, but it's just I feel like this has been announced and announced and announced, and then like at one point George's son was going to do it, and like I've seen George's son's work, and it's not the greatest, unfortunately.
I've never seen that. The Staunton Hill. Are you talking about?
Yeah, it has the fat tea lady from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake in it. It's pretty bad, but I don't know, like. It's not George. It's just not like leave it. Like just leave it alone. It's just done. And even that, like I'll say this, and I don't know. I know that you say like the last trilogy of Romero, you'd say that like in order. Like how many people like Diary and Survival? Like I actually like Diary. I've always have. But like how many people really like those last two to warrant wanting a Twilight of the Dead? I think it's just a classic. We're in the times now of got to do a sequel. Like Good Burger got a sequel in 2023. That was an established property of the 1990s. Keenan and Kel were teenagers. Now they're in their 40s. I like Keenan and Kel, and they haven't aged much, but goddamn. Same with Bill and Ted. They did it with Keanu Reeves. Let's get Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter in couples therapy. Really? Like that just seems to be it now. It's like, all right, call back to what used to work because it's just I feel like they're out of ideas. It's just I
Well,
don't
they're
have any hope
playing
for
to
it.
I think with stuff like that, they're playing to the nostalgia of probably my generation at this point, because we have, kids and money, disposable income at this point in our lives. So I guess that's the idea of, bringing back stuff like that. But the Twilight of the Dead, I actually got to read the treatment for Twilight of the Dead at the Romero archive, the original treatment that George wrote. And there's some interesting stuff in it. It's the treatment that I read is basically a sequel to Land of the Dead. It still has Big Daddy in it, still leading a army of
Oh,
zombies. There's some interesting stuff in it. I don't know how much of that's going to make it into the final movie, if the movie even gets made. Like I've done a couple of streams on it already and talked about it. It still feels like it's in that stage of where they're trying to garner interest to raise some money to make it, kind of like they did with like Night of the Living Dead 2. That was a thing. But I don't know if it happens. I'll be interested in watching it to see what they do. But my expectation levels are pretty low.
you gotta be. They have to be rock bottom. It's just not because at the same time, like I ask people, I'm like, okay, like, did you love Diary of Survival? Like, okay, if you're hyped for, like, why are you hyped for Twilight of the Dead then? Like, those were George's movies, and you didn't like them. Now you think something that's made posthumously, like after George is gone, you're gonna like. It's just, I don't know.
Well,
To me,
I will say I like. So I was able to, so when I was in Pittsburgh here recently, I was able to go to the Romero archive at the University of Pittsburgh and just go through a lot of his old scripts and old, ideas and treatments and photos and stuff like that. And I came across the original Dawn of the Dead treatment, like his very first draft of what he wanted Dawn of the Dead to originally be. And it wasn't even finished. He got to like page 89 and then just like that was it. It's like he just said, well, this ain't happening. I'm gonna restart. But reading that, like all of George's ideas for what would come in like Survival of the Dead, where there's a zombie riding a horse and they're eating animals and all the evolution of the zombies, George had that from day one. The original Dawn of the Dead script had zombies driving cars, shooting guns. Like there was a butcher zombie who was like feeding up, people in the mall. Like there's a butcher shop in the mall. So like reading that, it kind of put it back in, because I thought maybe like over time George kind of lost his way where he started having zombies riding horses and shit. And I was just like, man, I don't know, man. He's maybe gone too far. I don't know if they'd be riding horses, but like reading the original Dawn screenplay and seeing, zombies driving cars and having telepathic communications with each other and shit. It's like, so George had this whole idea mapped out from day one. It was just like, well, instead of putting it all in one film, I'll just span it out over the next 4 decades.
yeah,
So I kind of appreciate Survival of the Dead more after reading that script and being like, okay, so this is where he wanted to go the whole fucking time. But
that's amazing.
I don't know. So any last thoughts on Night 90? We're gonna move on to Mr. Snyder's Dawn of the Dead remake here in just a second.
I really like the movie. I would say that's my long story short.
Yeah, to me, this is the creme de la creme of Romero remakes. To me, which I think a lot of people may debate and argue that the next one is probably the creme de la creme of Romero remakes. Just depends on what you're interested in, what you like. But let's check the chat here before we go. Nige is free. Give me slow zombies. I'm not into the running zombies. Too hectic. I agree. I like the creeping. The slow creeping. There's something more. I don't know.
I agree.
A little more freaky about that. How do you feel, Robert Dobbins? How do you feel about the Ford brothers, The Dead and The Dead 2? I personally love them. Have you seen either one of those?
I have not.
I feel like I've seen that. If I'm not mistaken, The Dead is the one that takes place in the desert. Is that correct, Robert? And if that's what I'm thinking of, I've only seen it once, and it was years ago. But I remember I didn't hate it. I thought it was, for a low budget indie zombie flick, I thought it was pretty good. But I haven't seen the second one. I didn't even know there was a second one. Let's see, Dirk. I'm over all the retro throwback shit and the overuse of black lights and neon shit everywhere I look. Yeah, I'm kind of with you there, Dirk. Well, I mean, I know your thoughts on the most recent Scream films.
Oh God.
Well, how do you feel? But how do you feel like we just got the Halloween series, the David Gordon Green Halloween films? We just got the new Exorcist film, like the Evil Dead Rise and all that. Like, what do you think about like? Are you still interested in seeing any of this stuff? Does it get you excited when you're like, holy shit, they're making a new Exorcist movie? Or are you just kind of like, just show me anything else at this point?
Exactly the same. Anything else? I can't stand it. I cannot. I hated that new Halloween trilogy worse than anybody. There's no way hates it more. I would love to meet someone who does hate it more and shit on it with them. That would be that'd be basically it, man. No,
Well,
I'm good. I'm so tapped out of franchise, and that's not just with horror. It's with everything. It really is with everything. It's just like got like they're making like the next month the Wonka. They're coming out with a Wonka.
that
I
looks
do
so
not
fucking
give a
bad.
shit. I don't care about his teenage years. You're not Gene Wilder, my guy. No.
Exactly. Yeah, I've had enough. I mean, have you seen the new South Park Panderverse episode?
Oh no, I haven't.
It's basically they're kind of talking about Disney and how they kind of take beloved franchises and beloved characters and replace them with the Cartman. There's I don't know how to explain it, but Cartman plays the what's her name, Kathleen Kennedy, the
Yeah, yeah.
head of Disney now, and her answer to everything is make it a woman and make her gay. It's like, well, what do you want to do with the new Indiana Jones movie? God damn it, make it a woman and make it gay. Okay, what do you want to do about the new Star Wars movie? Make it a woman, make it gay. That's basically what they do with everything now.
Yeah.
Let's see, zombie evolution. That's right. That George had basically in that original Dawn screenplay. The evolution was like instead of going from A to B to C, George was like, "Here's A," and then in Dawn of the Dead, it was like A to Z. It's like we're already to the far brink in the end here. Robert Roberts says Africa and India is where the dead was shot. Yeah, I remember liking that movie. Okay, I don't remember much about it, but I remember watching it and I was like, this is not bad. But I didn't even know they made a sequel. Maybe I'll put that on the list of shit to check out. But let's move on. Second film here from 2004. This is 14 years after the Night of the Living Dead remake. We get first-time director Zack Snyder directing a Dawn of the Dead remake in 2004. Of course, Zack Snyder would go on to do 300 and a bunch of comic book movies that I've never seen and never will. Watchmen. He also did Army of the Dead. Have you seen Army of the Dead?
I have with Dave Bautista.
Fucking Bautista. I've never seen it. Is it any good? It's one of those movies that I saw this. Okay. It's one of those movies I saw the trailer for and saw the name Zack Snyder, and I was like, I don't think I'm gonna watch this. But yeah, so Zack Snyder directed. James Gunn wrote the screenplay. It was produced by Richard Rubenstein. This is a Rubenstein project because he owns the rights to Dawn of the Dead, of course. The budget for this one, $26 million. The box office was, I think, worldwide, it made over $100 million worldwide. So it made quite a bit of coin, which is why I think they kept making, which is why I think George got, the opportunity to make Land of the Dead after the fact. Released in March 19th, 2004, starring Ving Rhames, Sarah Polley, Mekhi Phifer. Pretty good cast. Of course, it had the cameo appearances from Ken Foray and Tom Savini and Scott Reiniger. Of course, there's all the little bits and pieces of the Galen Ross store and the mall. Yeah. So a lot of homage nods to the original, which I appreciate. But this is a film. When I first saw it, I remember when I saw the news that they were making a Dawn of the Dead remake, and when this came out, I was a huge Dawn of the Dead fan already. Well, that was my favorite film. That's all I cared about. That's all I loved. Like I was just obsessed with it in 2004. And I saw they were making the remake, and of course, the big thing back then was, James Gunn's writing it. Isn't that the motherfucker that wrote the Scooby-Doo movies? Like, he's writing Dawn of the Dead. Oh, this is going to be terrible, And then we saw cast, and I didn't know what it was about or the screenplay or anything like that. But I started seeing, cast announcements, like Sarah Polley and Ving Rhames. And I was thinking, Sarah Polley would make a good, Francine. And Ving Rhames would make a good Peter, and I was like, okay, this is kind of making sense. But then when the film came out, and I remember going to see the film with my dad. Me and my dad used to go watch we would see 28 Days Later when it came out, the Resident Evil when it came out, because I was a huge fan of the game. And we went to see the Dawn of the Dead remake, and I remember liking it a lot when I first saw it. And of course, I remember that first 15 minutes of the film where everything kind of goes to shit in the first 15 minutes, and then it goes to the Johnny Cash song. They played that on the USA Network like a few days before the film was released as kind of like a promotion. They played that first 10, 15 minutes.
Wow.
All the way through. And I remember seeing that, and I was like, this is going to be fucking awesome. So we went to see it, and I remember I really liked it. I remember picking it up on DVD when it came out, and I watched it a few more times. But as time went on, it was just more and more like the more I thought about it, I guess the more that my taste changed, and the more that I dug in, and my love for the original Don grew. I was just like, I have no interest in ever watching that remake again. But do you remember the first time? I mean, how old were you the first time that you saw it? Were you aware of it when it first came out, or was it something that you kind of saw after the fact?
So I saw after the fact for sure, because I saw Dawn when I was like 9, and that would have been in 2005 or 2004. So yeah, I saw the original when the remake was coming out because I had saw Night on TV. So yeah, it wasn't to the point where like had I been like now, like let's say I was like 26, and then if it was okay, the Dawn of the Dead remake's coming out, and the guy that wrote the Scooby-Doo movie, oh my God, you probably I could not imagine the perfect storm that would have been. Like my fear and anger would probably have been insane. But after I did see the original and fell in love with it, I waited a long time. Like I would see it was one of those movies that was on MTV a lot. I don't know why. It was like MTV or Views, or it was always shown on TV, and I was like no, you can't remake the greatest movie ever made. No. And I was hostile for years. I was like, there's no way. Like there's just no, I don't know if I'll be able to watch it and appreciate it for what it was until I finally sat down and watched it. And I was like, there's no way I could bury this. I think it's really well done. And I think actually the best thing in it is James Gunn's writing. I really do. And you look at what he's gone on to do, whether it be the Guardians movies, which it's $1 billion franchise, and it's earned him the whole thing with DC. DC just gave him this whole contract, and he's going to be the head of creative moving forward. And he's come a long way from writing Scooby-Doo movies. Now it's like he's the
didn't he originally start with Trauma?
He did. He originally started with Trauma, and he did Slither, which was like a bomb, like a huge bomb, and almost ended his career. And then, of course, the rest is history, I guess, as they say. But like, I was so blown away. I was like, this is fantastic. I thought what it changed and kept the same heart. Like, yeah, the zombies are running here. They're on energy drinks or whatever. But it worked for this movie, as opposed to, if it had just been the same as the original. I think that was a good thing for this movie. I thought the cast did a really wonderful job. I thought the writing was good. You had the character moments, not as good as in the original, but well enough to give the pass. Like, I love the scene where they're all sitting down at the dinner table, and she says, what was your best job? He said, being a dad. And then, what was your worst job? I was being a husband. Like, I liked that. I was like, okay, this is not mindless, and it worked. Like, I liked some of the character moments, and when the dad got bit, like one of the ladies' dad, and she's like, what, are you gonna go shoot him? What are you gonna do, shoot him in front of the daughter? Like, I like they had a lot of humanity in it, and I was like, okay, this is working. And of course, Ving Rhames, always a pro. Love Ving Rhames in this movie. I think he's great. And a good successor to Ken Foree. Again, having the
Ving Rhames is he's a huge Romero fan. He actually, when he heard that they were remaking Dawn of the Dead, he actually went to the filmmakers and said, I want a role in this. Like, he wanted to be a part of it, which I guess is why he ended up in Day of the Dead too. But
oh God, yeah, that one he should have been. Nah, you know what? I'm not that big of a fan. Like, he should have. I forgot my fandom for a little bit, but I don't. Hopefully, got a good paycheck if that movie had an $18 million budget.
Oh, he had money would have gone. Other than that, but
yeah, I don't know. I think it's really well done. Like, I like the location. I do think the filter, like that early 2000s filter, like what the Saw movies had at that time, and that is not the greatest. The zombie baby, I to this day, I thought it was stupid when I first saw it. I still think it's so out of
It's
place in
funny.
the movie. Granted, it's not a bad idea. Like I could get him
I
being
don't know what
like,
that
all
was.
right, and then zombie baby. Like maybe on paper it sounded like crazy, but it just in the movie I was like, what the hell? But again, that scene you get the classic Romero 101. It's like, he was hiding this on the side the entire time. Whereas if they knew about it, she would have just been killed and none of this, all this would have been avoided. Yet innocent people died in the crossfire because of that. So again, kind of the Romero 101 there. So I don't know. I think it's pretty good though, but I thought I was going to hate it. I really did. That goes to show you, I promise you, I'm not jaded or, biased. I gave it a fair shot and I really liked it.
Yeah, I think after rewatching it for the first time in quite a few years, I just rewatched it a couple weeks ago, and that was the first one I went back and rewatched. There's some parts in it that I'm just like when they're talking about the fat chick at Dairy Queen, and it's just like this is not necessary, not necessary dialogue between these characters, but the issue that I have with the zombies is maybe not that they're fast or fast zombies as much as slow zombies. It's just it's the same issue that I have with most any zombie movie now is that you really can't tell. Like the beauty of Dawn of the Dead is that the zombies have their own personality, their own. You can still see like you remember them. Like even if they don't have a big role, you can just see them in the background. The zombie with the gun or stuff like that. It's like you can't. There's not a lot of where you can really pick them apart.
None of that.
They all
No.
just kind of look like the same glob of goo. But the runnings, the whole running zombie thing, it's like to me, I don't know if you've seen Nightmare City, Umberto Lindsay's Nightmare City.
Yeah, of course.
That's what they remind me of, just their movements and the way that they're, so I don't have an issue with that. I don't know. I'm really conflicted because the original Dawn of the Dead is just, to me, it's perfect. So when you're trying to remake, I'm trying to watch it. I'm trying to be in the mindset of like, just judge it on its own merits. It's a really well-made film. What's your favorite food?
Pizza.
Pizza. Okay. So let's say somebody's coming to your house and they say, hey, we have the best pizza you've ever had. And you're like, oh my God, I love pizza. And it's like, okay, well, I just ordered a pizza. It's on its way. And now let's say the pizza gets there. It's a hamburger. And they're like, here's your pizza. And you're like, well, this is not a pizza. This is a hamburger. It's a delicious hamburger. It's a very well-made hamburger. It's cooked perfectly. Like the toppings are fresh. The bun is delicious. A freshly baked bun. Great, well-made burger. But it's not a pizza.
Yeah.
It's like, that's how it feels to me. The Dawn remake to me, it's like, don't call it Dawn of the Dead. Because that's in my head, I'm thinking I'm about to watch Dawn of the Dead, but then it's just not Dawn of the Dead. And then when I talk to people about Dawn of the Dead who are, are just the laymen, the casuals, they're just like, oh yeah, the one with Ving Rhames. I'm like, no, not that one. So it's almost like I live in a world now where you say the word Dawn of the Dead, people automatically think of the remake a lot of the times now. And it's kind of like if you were like talking about pizza and somebody's like, oh yeah, I love pizza. I love and then they're talking about a hamburger and you're just like, no, wrong thing, So that's kind of my overall feeling on the film is that it's a very well-made film, well acted. The effects are very well done. Some of the I've talked about the Down with the Sickness. I hate that fucking the ending of Dawn of the Dead, the Dawn of the Dead remake. I'll just say is terrible. I don't like that ending at all. But I think the movie as a whole, I love little nods to the original. I love that they brought back Ken. I love that they got Tom. Of course, at the beginning when you see the helicopter flying over when the car hits the gas pump. If you look closely, that helicopter's got the WGON label on the side of it. So it's there's the B&P trucking is the truck that they're driving. So there's all the cool little nods. And I got to say, after watching, the next two we're going to talk about, I mean, this is, way above those.
Yeah, they cared. You could tell that they cared. And like, again, that heart was there when they were picking off the celebrities. Oh, shoot Rosie. Oh, get Jay Leno. I thought that stuff was fun. And again, like you said, the cameo from Ken. What a great cameo. That's one of my favorite cameos ever. Like I remember when I was like, what? I freaked out. I was like, and to get him to say the line again, I was
Mm-hmm.
like, wow, like that is great. And for him to also give like the ultra, like having sex out of wedlock and killing unborn babies. I love how he delivers that. Like, how do you think your God will judge you? Like,
Yeah.
I marked out when I first saw. I was like, that's awesome. And to see Scott, I never in my life
Mm-hmm.
thought they would. I was like, what? I was like, that was Scott. I was like, I thought that you could clearly tell that they gave a shit. I think that really helps it. And I think the characters are pretty good. Like, I like I can't think of the actor's name, but the love interest of Sarah Polly, I thought he was really good. I thought he added a nice little heart to the movie, and I thought the finale was kind of fun as they're leaving. Like the one asshole, the guy from Modern Family, I don't know his damn name, but he's like,
Ty
oh,
Burrell.
yeah, he's like, why don't we just go get my boat and go to an island, you bunch of assholes? And they're all like, yeah, like basically, and they
But see, like that's an issue that I like. That's one of the issues of the film I have. Is like why leave at that point? They're safe. It's there, and it just kind of seemed like I don't know, just rewatching, that was just a little issue I had, is they just kind of decided, well, we got to get out of here for no better reason than we can't stay here forever. So let's go to a boat where it's like, that's not, I don't know.
It maybe wasn't logical, but I got it because again, that's right after the zombie baby thing, and Ving Rhames, like innocent people die in that crossfire, and I think the whole point is that innocent people will die in this crossfire too. Like we're all holding secrets that we don't, only what you're hiding, and I think that's the whole point. Is like
That's
I
true.
think Ving Rhames says I've made a lot of bad choices in my life, but the ultimate one would be sitting here waiting to die. Like we're just gonna go and give it a shot. And even again in the original Dawn of the Dead, but where are you going? Oh, we got an idea. Maybe we can make it to the island. What island? Any island. I thought I was like, okay. I was like, you're gonna go to the fucking island. I thought that worked. I don't know. I get you logically. It doesn't really make fucking. I would stay in that mall and take my chances, but again,
Right.
I didn't think it was awful. And that whole finale really felt like a video game almost, like the throw in the propane tank and shooting it.
Yeah.
I was like, holy shit! Like this is. It really went epic feeling with it, and I quite like it. I think and I'll put it to you this way, man. Now, knowing that this is our favorite, the original is our favorite movie ever. There are some people that like I feel terrible when they had their favorite movies remade. Like if I like Texas Chainsaw Massacre is my second
Yeah.
favorite movie ever. I hate that remake. I know it's beloved for some reason, but I hate that one. And the same thing with Halloween, and whether it be the 2018 or the Rob Zombie, like I don't necessarily despise the Rob Zombie, but if the original is my favorite movie, oh my God, imagine that. Like, it's just like the opening of that movie. Like, what the fuck, man? Like, oh, no,
Well,
no way.
imagine if your favorite horror movie of all time is Day of the Dead.
Yeah, exactly.
Segueing. So, Dawn of the Dead 2004. I like it. It's a very well made film. It's not the original, like I said, but it's a good film. I gotta say.
It is.
Let me hit the chat here before we go and move on to Day of the Dead. And see, I hate saying that because then I automatically think of fucking Day of the Dead.
The good Day of the Dead.
Yeah, well, we'll call it Steve Miner's Day of the Dead. We'll just go with that.
Oh God, we got to talk about this.
Well, we'll get into it. Aiden Favre, what's up? Hello, everyone. Aiden says Army of the Dead was so disappointing and way too long. I think that's most any movie I see these days is it's fucking way too long and disappointing. Aiden says that's so awful. All these wannabe Romero zombie films had to make bank in order for the zombie creator George to make Land of the Dead. That's true. I mean, that's kind of how it happened. But I mean, at the same time, thank God, I mean, you discovered the original Dawn of the Dead probably because that remake came out, because Rubenstein knew that remake was coming out. So what better way to double up on your money and on all this advertising than to, release this remake and at the same time Anchor Bay is releasing the original Dawn of the Dead on the Divi Max and then the box set that we would initially get. So we had all this new Dawn of the Dead stuff come out at the exact same time, which brought in, another generation of fans like yourself. So
That's when the Ultimate Edition came out, right? Like that classic.
right.
That was 2004, I think. So yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah. Let's see, Robert Dobbins. Yeah, but Ving Rhames was in day remaking at Blue Dogs Recorders. It sure does. Maybe we should have saved that one for the.
That's a way to put it.
That'd
Yeah.
be a good segue. Nige is free. Have you guys ever seen Zombie Lake?
Oh, terrible movie. Jess
Terrible.
Franco had his name on that. That has got to be one of the worst zombie movies out there.
That's a very high bar. If you've made the worst zombie movie ever, I mean, we're going to talk about one here in a second, but I mean it's a pretty high bar. Let's see. We got 1911 Guitar Dude. I feel the same way about Dawn 2004 as you do, Alpha. I've only seen it twice, and that's enough. It's not necessarily a bad movie, but that's all I care for. There's just no comparison to Dawn 78.
Yeah,
I agree. I don't think I probably won't go back and rewatch the remake anytime soon. But like I said, I went back. I got a different appreciation for it now. I like much better what the same production company did later with the prequel to The Thing. That's interesting. I've never seen that prequel to The Thing. Have you seen that?
unfortunately, yeah. I wish. See, again, imagine The Thing was your favorite movie. Fucking, oh my God.
That's kind of why I've never went out of my way to see it.
You made the right choice, my friend. You made some very wise decisions avoiding Creepshow 3 and The Thing, and you made very smart, man.
I'm very selective with what I spend my time watching, and when it comes to Romero remakes and remakes of any horror classic, like it's gonna take a little extra. I saw the Dawn remake first. It's one of the finest action horror movies ever made. But then I saw the original, and it's truly one of the best films ever made. I think Aiden sums it up perfectly there.
Good point.
Perfectly. Let's see. Nige's Free. The zombies were more like 28 Days Later zombies. Yeah, and that's what I was saying to Grande earlier. I feel like the Dawn remake was made because of the success and kind of 28 Days Later reinventing the zombie genre somewhat. Let's see. Dirk says Nightmare City is gold. Lindsay said it's not a zombie film, but a radiation sickness movie. Well, Lindsay, I also saw an interview with Umberto Lindsay where he was talking about how Nightmare City is a more realistic portrayal of the zombie apocalypse than any of Romero's films. So that's Lindsay's opinion on things.
Yeah, that's his opinion. All right.
And Dirk says Dawn remake I prefer. LOL. Well, Dirk, we still love you. Won't hold it against you. Dirk is not a big Dawn fan of the original. Which
he was. I did a stream with him. He was telling me he thought it was boring. I was like, what? I was like, wow.
See, I've heard a ton of different, like, I've shown Dawn of the Dead to a lot of ex-girlfriends, a lot of cousins, a lot of friends, everybody that I know I have made watch that film at some point. And I've heard a lot of critiques. I've never heard boring. I've heard cheesy, I've heard campy, I've heard corny, but never heard anybody say this is boring. So, I mean, different perspective. I mean, that's the subjective perspective right there, I guess. So
yeah, there it is.
So let's move on to, oh boy, 2008. We get the Day of the Dead remake directed by Steve Miner, who, credits to his name, Friday 2, Friday the 13th Part 3, Halloween H2O. House. I mean, dude had some good.
Lake Placid.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of when you think of like Masters of Horror, that's always been kind of a name that's kind of been like right there next to it. Who's done a lot of good stuff. So when I saw him attached to the Day of the Dead remake, I was originally like, okay, that's interesting. That might be okay. Boy, was I fucking wrong. Steve Miner directed a budget. This movie had a fucking budget of $18 million. And I don't know where a cent of it went other than to Nick Cannon and Mina Suvari. Yeah. The box office take on this, I don't even know. I don't even remember this being in theaters when it came out.
It was in theaters? There's no way. I could have swore this was direct.
It must have been in like a handful of theaters on a weekend somewhere because it only grossed $300,000. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, I do not remember this playing theatrically. Wow.
Yeah, it came out April 8th, 2008, starring Ving Rhames, Mina Safari, and Nick Cannon, and it was written by Jeffrey Reddick. That's
Final Destination, right?
Final Destination. So I mean, you see a cast with some names: Mina Suvari, Nick Cannon, Ving Rhames, Steve Miner directing, written by Jeffrey Reddick, who wrote Final Destination. You're thinking $18 million budget, Day of the Dead remake. This might be pretty good. Thoughts?
Thoughts is in 1985, George A. Romero made the darkest day in horror the world has ever known. But in 2008, Steve Miner took the darkest, smelliest piece of shit that the world has ever smelled in Day of the Dead 2008. And this is atrocity of a movie. I mean, like, where to begin? It's just terrible. I mean, I am shocked with all those names too that this was so bad. And granted, I am not a I'm a Nick Cannon hater. Like, there is nothing, like, nothing says movie star less to me than Nick Cannon. Like,
you're not a Drumline fan?
No, I'm not a fan. I love all that, but he was the one that was not all that. You know, like, he just, oh God, horrible. And Mina Suvari, I generally like. She was here for a pair of boots. I don't believe she gave a shit. Her performance is as dull as you can imagine. She was just, I swear to you, she did this movie for a pair of boots. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. She was just,
I think they all did.
Yeah. Ving Rhames as Rhodes. Ving Rhames is Rhodes. I'm like, when I first heard that, I'm like, Ving Rhames is the Joe Pilato? I'm thinking it's going to be the underground, real remake. It's
right.
Not. That's really where I don't even understand why they called this Day of the Dead. You could have called this any generic sci-fi original movie title, and it wouldn't be, it still would be a piece of shit, but it wouldn't have that name on it for me to be like, okay, compared to the 85 film, but it does. And holding it to that standard, oh my God, does it fall flat? It's, the zombies in it are atrocious. The pacing is atrocious. It's all rushed. Oh my God, you don't remember one of the characters' names. I couldn't even tell you Nick Cannon's character's name in the movie. Couldn't even tell you.
He was, well, I just watched it the other day. So he actually plays Salazar.
Salazar, there you go.
Which is Hispanic, which is supposed to be Miguel Salazar, the Anthony DeLeo's character in the original Day of the Dead. That's who that's supposed to be, I guess. I don't
kidding.
Know. No, that's his name. I don't know.
Oh
has
my
nothing to do with that character.
I never even knew that. That's so wild. Wow. Well, I'll tell you one thing. He's no Anthony DeLeo at all. And I never thought I'd make a comparison in my life between those two people, but here we are. It's just an atrocity. Vegetarian zombies, a really poor direction from a very good director, in my opinion. I think this is an abomination. But what are your thoughts, man?
This is one of the worst fucking movies I can remember watching here in recent time. And I've told you, I'm very selective about what I watch, so I don't usually just sit down and watch anything blind. But I knew we were doing the stream, and I was like, I've never seen the film until now, and I never had any interest in it. But I knew we were doing the stream, and I was like, I got to watch this fucking movie now. So I sat down and watched it, and it's like one of the worst sci-fi original movies. That the CGI effects in this movie. I mean, even the Sci-Fi Channel would probably at some point say, "I don't fucking know about this. Like, this does not look good." And compared to some of the stuff, I mean, the screenplay is terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, Final Destination. I love Final Destination. I think that's a really good horror film. Really well written horror film.
Yeah.
I don't know what the fuck any of these people were on when they were making this. Jeffrey Reddick, Steve Miner. I don't know what. I mean, it looked like somebody who had never directed anything before had directed this. And as I was watching it, I didn't even know what the budget was when I first started watching the film. And I was like, man, this maybe a $2-3 million budget.
That's what I would say, $3-4 million.
Yeah. Easy. And I looked it up and I saw $18 million. I'm like, where did that go? It didn't go in the script. I mean, I guess maybe the actors, the names, to get the names of, I mean, I guess Mina Suvari is somewhat of a name. Nick Cannon was somewhat of the name, I guess. I don't know. But man, just nothing about this movie was any good. But at the same time, I will say this. It was so bad and had almost absolutely nothing to do with the original to the point where I could actually kind of watch it and not compare it to the original because it had nothing to fucking do with it other than like some names, like the names Sarah and Salazar and Captain Rhodes and shit.
Why do you think they went that way? Like, why do you think they didn't just have it be in a bunker with those same actors and like try to actually remake it and then change stuff from there? Like, why? Like, it's almost like we'll take the name and the names of the characters, but the templates completely changed. Like, at least the other two, Night of the Living Dead 90, it's in a farmhouse. Dawn of the Dead, it's in a mall. It's just in a like a radio station. And then it's in
A lot of it, yeah.
military, like what? Like, oh God, horrible.
I have no idea. I don't know. I guess they were trying to play to a younger audience. I thought maybe because let's face it, the original Day of the Dead. At the time was not very successful. It was not action packed or whatever people were thinking. I guess they were wanting another Dawn. So I guess they could have gone that route, but at the same time, I'm sure they were just like, well, we got the name because of course, like this was 2008, so George was popular at the time. He had just released Diary of the Dead, which Diary of the Dead came out that same year, and Diary's budget was $2 million, and just the difference in quality between these two films is not even on the same fucking page. So I think they just got the name Day of the Dead because it was something of the dead. They had Dawn of the Dead remake and just all this. It's insane. So I think they just used that name and then just kind of like what they did with the Resident Evil film when they finally made Resident Evil. They just took an existing screenplay, threw in some names, and called it Resident Evil. I think that's kind of what somebody did with this. I don't know much about the history. I don't know if this was just a screenplay that Jeffrey Reddick had on standby for a zombie film that he had. I have no fucking idea. I don't know what this was. I don't even know where to begin. The screenplay is so bad. It's like they did one run at it and it was like, here's the first draft, and they're like, okay, let's shoot.
There's no heart in this movie either. Like with like the Dawn remake, we said what we said, and I think we both gave it a good enough praise, especially compared to this movie. It is the original fucking Dawn of the Dead, and then but like the heart was there. There's no heart here. Like they lose their mom, like Mina Suvari, they lose her, and it's like
that's the best fucking part of this. It's like Mina Suvari, and of course it's not Bub, it's Bud in this, and in Bud it gets bitten, and he's a soldier, and there's like a love interest there, and he gets bitten by a zombie, and of course he starts to turn, and then he eventually does turn into a zombie, but he's a good zombie because he's a vegetarian, of course, so he's not interested in eating meat, and so Nick Cannon's character Salazar is just like, I gotta shoot him now, he's one of those, and Mina Suvari is the Sarah character, I guess you can call her, is just like, no, don't shoot him, he might be, she still feels for him, even though he's a zombie and all that. But then, like, the very next scene, it's like the mom is now a zombie and she's hurt, coming towards the radio station. And then here comes Mina Suvari, just destroys her own mother and not even think twice about it. It's just like, what? You're defending this guy that you just met like 20 minutes ago, but your mom's a zombie now, so we just got to just annihilate her with this fucking thing. And not think twice about it.
It's really contradictory. What? Yeah, and then like that character, the vegetarian zombie, even before he becomes vegetarian zombie, he's even more unbearable as a human. He's like, oh, I'm riding in a car with a girl. Oh my God. I'm like, God damn, somebody kill this guy. And then of course, no, he's one of the friendly zombies. He's gonna eat some fucking broccoli, not my skin. Horrible, horrendous. Jeffrey Reddick, bad idea, buddy. Bad.
The screenplay, because the characters were supposed to be like military people, soldiers, whatnot, but they're written as like dorky teenagers or something. It's like the Nick Cannon, his character. It's embarrassing how like stereotypical black character is written. Like his only lines in the whole film are like, motherfucker, or that's what I'm talking about. It's like it's what's not another teen movie, the token black guy, where he's just like, that is whack. It's like, that's all I can say in these movies because I'm just a token black guy. It's like, I gotta say that is whack. That's pretty much Nick Cannon's character in Day of the Dead.
Look at the great list of wonderful actors that, like, okay, you even go from the originals. You got Dwayne Jones, Ken Foree, Terry Alexander, to Tony Todd, to freaking Ving Rhames, to Nick Cannon. Like, what? Like, Oh my God. This is oh, and then plummet. That's not a movie star. I would have loved if they had gotten Kel Mitchell. That's where you should have got Kel, man. No. Imagine Kel Mitchell versus zombies. I'd see that movie.
Dude. just,
Yeah.
just have him as fucking dude from Good Burger.
Yeah. I don't know. Horrible casting, and Mina Suvari didn't give a shit. And like, you do have Annalyn McCord, who's become something of like I don't know, like a direct-to-video screen queen. She's in that movie Excision. It's a pretty good body horror movie. She's a good-looking lady for what it's worth. She's in there, and I'm always like, oh shit, she's in this. I forgot, but again, no character. There's just no emotion to this movie. It's just such a fart in church, man. And oh God, it stinks quite bad. I can't stand this movie, man. It sucks.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the worst ever. I gotta say,
I agree
that I've ever, because it's so bad that it's like I mean, there were certain points in this film where I literally laughed out loud, like almost just like just oh my God. Aiden says, vegetarian zombie, enough said. Laugh my fucking ass off. I mean, yeah, that's so. It's the stupidest.
That's what everyone remembers. I will say this: people remember that. Everyone remembers
because it's so fucking dumb. If I go out in the street and take a shit, people will remember it. It's like, remember when that guy went out in the street and took a shit? It's like,
yeah. What did Jim Cornette always used to say? Oh yeah, garbage is a household name, but it stinks when it gets old too.
Exactly. Exactly. So freaking bad. That movie looks like shit. It does. It looks like a made for Sci-Fi Channel movie.
Is that green saw filter on the whole movie? It is atrocious. Oh.
It's so bad. Huge direct-to-video vibes, and easily the worst film Steve Miner probably ever made. I mean, I'd have to look at his whole IMDb or whatever. Maybe I'd find something, but I don't know.
It'd be hard.
It's gonna be hard to top.
Worse than this.
Hard to fucking top. 1911 Guitar Dude, I gave up on all Day of the Dead remakes or sequels after Day of the Dead 2 Contagion. Well, you're very smart. Unfortunately, I had to watch it because I had the idea of doing a Romero remake stream.
Have you seen Day of the Dead 2 Contagion?
No.
Okay, that one is actually even worse. I will say that.
Is it really?
Yes. The Doodlesons are the devil. Like, you have the mom, Kathy Bates and the Water Boy. So-and-so the devil. Like, if I was that, nope, the Doodlesons, they're the devil.
Jesus Christ. I can't imagine. But I mean, I've seen like bits, I've seen pieces of Contagion, and yeah, I can definitely see that it's probably a lot lower budget. So I mean, I kind of gives me a little more leeway. But I mean, just the fact that this was an $18 million film and it looks and is as bad as it is mind-blowing.
It is. Yeah, that's true. I didn't know that was the budget. That's insane.
Aiden says Mina Suvari can be a really good actress sometimes. Yes, she can. American Beauty. It's great in American Beauty. And her brief role in Domino. Everyone in this film was phoning it in and did it for the paycheck. I mean, it has to be. It has to be.
Feels that way.
Let's see. Dirk says, I skipped day when you know. Yeah. When you know. Just fucking skip it. 18 million made 301,000. Yeah. Which I don't know. I mean, that's I guess that's box office. I don't know how much it made on DVD and video, but it can't be that fucking much. I mean, I do see these out in the wild a lot and like used DVDs stores and shit. But
yeah, you'll see this in like the Walmart $3 bin all the time. That's
So I definitely didn't make its budget back by any stretch of the imagination. See, Aiden says Ice Cube would have been better than Nick Cannon. I mean,
Ghost of Mars, where you at?
Exactly. You can put him in Ghost of Mars. So yeah, I guess we can move on from this Day of the Dead and go to our final remake of the night. And this is one I'm interested in getting your thoughts on because I'm a little torn on it. It's The Crazies from 2010. Of course, you got the Crazy shirt on. You're a Crazies fan, so I'd like to get your idea on this. Of course, directed by Breck Eisner. Is that how you think of him? Yeah. Breck Eisner of Sahara and The Last Witch Hunter. Never seen either one of those. Had a budget of 20 million. Box office brought in 54 million, so it made its budget back. Made a little bit of money. Released in February 26, 2010, starring Timothy Olyphant in The Crazies. And this one, I think George is credited as he has a executive producer credit on this one, I believe. So he may have made some bank on this movie.
I
But
think George though said at the time he was like, I don't know what. Like he was like, I have nothing to do with that. Like I think George like distanced himself from this movie.
I don't blame him. But what are your thoughts on this remake? Like, do you remember when it came out? Did you see it in theaters when it came out?
I didn't see it in theaters, but I saw it shortly after because I loved the original. Like I actually really like the original Romero movie. I love it. I think it's really the precursor to what Dawn ends up becoming. Like I see a lot, like you see Richard France in there, and you see again some of the social messages and things like that. And you also have like Richard Liberty in the movie, who it's always Dr. Frankenstein, and you have Lynn Lowry, who was really a 70s scream queen when you think about it. Think about Shivers, think about oh my god, I Drink Your Blood, think about, you know, a lot of the movies that she was in. I always remember her being in it, and her death scene where the lambs, like those lambs, like all scatter. One of my favorite shots. I love that shot. I was a big fan, and I was like, wow, they're remaking the Crazies. I was like, that's a fucking curveball, because I thought if you'd come to me, okay, if they were to remake a Romero entity that's not a Dead movie, I would think it would have to be Creepshow. Like there's no doubt that that would be the movie, but for whatever reason, it was the Crazies. And I was like intrigued. I saw Timothy Oliphant. So that was immediately like, not really. Doesn't really say movie star, doesn't really say lead actor, but I was like, okay. I was like, I'll give it a shot. It looked rather generic from the trailers, and I waited to rent it. This was still, I think, this might have been around the time the Red Box was out. I don't know if you remember. Yeah, the Red Box was out, and I rented it off the Red Box. And I was kind of lukewarm on it. I was like, okay, like not the worst remake in the world, better than the Day of the Dead, but I don't know. At the same time, you easily could have just not called it the Crazies. I feel like it could have been something else. Like to me, the biggest problem with this movie is that the original movie, the people actually just go crazy. In this movie, you have like in the opening, you have he shoots this guy in a baseball field that, you know, is whacked out of his mind, doesn't say a word. Then his family is crazy later on, and they're like can think perfectly straight. They're tied up the fucking wife. They're cutting promos like, oh, you killed so and so, and we're gonna stab you in the throat now. I'm like, god damn it, they're full control of what they're doing. How are they crazy? Like it just felt like it kept breaking its own rules. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
It's kind of middle of the road for me. What do you think?
Well, I remember seeing it in the theater, and I feel like I remember liking it quite a bit when I saw it in the theater. And I think that was the only time I ever really sat down and watched the film all the way through. There is a cameo appearance from Lynn Lowry in.
Oh my god, which is hysterical. Sorry, go ahead.
She on the bicycle. I don't know if when she's in the town. I don't know, but yeah,
the cameo. Just stupid. Like, all right, Lynn, you're gonna get on this fucking bicycle. You're gonna go do 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 do. And just, I was like, I remember at first, I was like, that was not Lynn Lowry. Like, you cannot tell me. And then they were like, yeah, that was her. I was like, what in the hell? Like,
I don't know. I guess they had to do something as a nod to the original, because rewatching it the other day, like it just they missed the fucking point of the Crazies. Like this film, like he's in the original film and the Crazies, the people that get, you know, the bug just go crazy. They're just crazy people. They're not necessarily homicidal or violent. Sometimes it does manifest itself in that, or sometimes you're just out in a field sweeping up dead bodies. You know, like there's people just do crazy shit, or you're playing a piano, or you're knitting, and then you stab a guy to death with a knife. You know, there's just people being crazy, and the whole the danger and the horror of the situation is the response of the U.S. government and the response of the military, and just how fucked up it is, and nobody can communicate with each other to really know how to deal with this situation or what needs to happen. You got Richard France playing, you know, the scientist who's, you know, trying to, you know, find a solution to the problem, but he can't get a hold of, he can't communicate with the military, and there's just like so many different layers to the original Crazies, even though it's a very low budget film, very flawed in a lot of ways, just because mostly budgetary reasons. But in the remake, it's pretty, to me, it just felt like they wanted to make another zombie-esque movie, put George's name on it, call it something associated with George, and see what, and it made money. So I mean, I guess it worked. But man, rewatching it the other night, I just thought it was really fucking boring, if nothing else.
Yeah, it's very Hollywood. It's very like the original movie was so indie and it was so of its time. It's distinctly 1970s. Like I have that Blue Underground Blu-ray. I have not yet upgraded to the Arrow. I know the Arrow did like a 2K scan of the movie, which I
Mm-hmm.
should get, but I have that Blue Underground. The colors in that movie just pop. I love like the green fields and just how 1970s that movie is. I think that's like a big reason why I always liked the original movie. And I always thought it was actually one of Romero's like more undersung movies. Like it's never really mentioned. Like when you people put Martin over, it's like, oh, Martin's great. It's like that Season of the Witch and the Crazies are two that just really got lost in the shuffle. And I think both those movies work in the era that they were made. Like I don't think you could remake either one of those movies because they're distinctly of their era. Season of the Witch especially. But this one too, like this, it's like, okay, we'll take that idea, we'll put the Hollywood gloss filter over it, and then we'll just really make it more of like a generic. It almost times felt like an action movie. Like
Yeah, yeah,
I
it's
don't
just
know.
literally the story. Like in the original, like you had, it moved fast. There were so many different perspectives that the story was being told from. You had the military perspective. You had the, the group of survivors trying to escape, their perspective. You had Richard France's perspective from the scientific side, and all these perspectives trying to commingle and come to some kind of conclusion, or some kind of solution. Whereas in this one, it just felt like you're just following this group of people trying to escape for no real particular reason other than just trying to escape containment or whatever. um and it's just like, it was just like one setup to like a jump scare after another, one setup, jump scare, setup, jump scare. And I don't know, it just didn't hit for me on the second. Whereas like going back and rewatching, like we are talking about Night 90 earlier, changed a little bit of my perspective on that film. Rewatching Dawn remake definitely changed my perspective on that one. The Crazies is one I think that I like less watching it again here recently than I did. And of course, that's probably also because in 2010 when this came out, I had seen The Crazies. I was aware of The Crazies, but I don't think I liked it as much as I like the movie now after watching it more times over the years, and especially after going through the COVID pandemic and stuff. And it's just like,
Exactly. That's what I
and
said
now
to my
you're just like,
dad.
this is a mirror. This is
Yes.
exactly what's going on.
I remember, I'll never forget that. That is so funny you mentioned that. Like, I remember when COVID first happened and we were standing in line in the grocery store with like masks and at that time gloves. We were just like, I was scared. Like, I swear to you, I was standing there with gloves and I looked like I looked like, one of the, just not with the gas mask, I guess, just a regular mask. I remember saying to him, I said, man, Romero. And he was like, what? And I said, The Crazies. He's like, I haven't seen that one. We went right home that night and put it on. He's looked at me. He's like, son of a bitch was on to something 47 years before it happened. I was like, yeah, it's so
Exactly.
true. It's like, I agree with that wholeheartedly. But yeah, no, like, I just feel like this, it's not the worst thing ever. It's not like I would watch this over Day of the Dead. I wouldn't say it's a piece of shit. It's just, I would much rather the original movie is just so miles and above better, and he did it with so much less money. Like, okay, is there some technical issues with the original movie? Yes, like the scene where the helicopter is chasing them, and he's like shooting at that stuff. It's vastly improved when you get to the Dawn of the Dead. But like in the Crazies, you can clearly tell they just didn't have the money to shoot that stuff. Therefore, it's like a lot of sound effects, and you could tell like it's
Yeah.
one of those. He wasn't able to hide the negative there, but I think with this remake, they had those luxuries. They were able to, like, in this, they drive away from an atomic bomb at the end. Like,
Right.
like what? I don't know. This just a middle of the road movie. It's not the worst remake of all time. To me, the I have never laughed harder at a cameo than Lynn Lowry. I thought that was so funny. I was like, what the hell? Like they called the, hey Lynn, you ready for a paycheck? We're gonna have you ride a bicycle right past our two leads. All right,
He's
I'm
there.
coming. Horrible. I don't know. It's very
It's
mid.
it's not, and Oh, I mean, there's obviously parts of the film too that are direct ripoffs of the Dawn remake, including the beginning of the film starting with a Johnny Cash song.
That's
Like
right.
the film opens
Yeah.
with "I'll be," what is it? We'll meet again.
Yeah. We'll
Don't
meet
know
again.
where,
Don't know
don't
when.
know when. And it's just like, as soon as I heard that, I was like, motherfuckers, they were just trying to do another Dawn remake, which I guess it worked. They made money, so. But I mean,
Would
that's
you say
pretty
it was
much.
poorly acted or poorly directed?
um,
Like in comparison to the original, like I know in the original you have that love story, and I thought it worked for the most part. You also have the incestuous angle with Richard France and Lynn Lowry, which was disturbing. Like I don't know how I felt about. I thought the guy who played like the deputy was okay in this.
yeah, I mean, it wasn't egregiously bad. Um, Again, I just feel like this movie's just boring and blah. Like, I don't think there's anything really that stands. Like, it's not even like I would kind of rather just watch the Day of the Dead remake again than watch the Crazies remake just to have a good fucking laugh, if nothing else. Like, at least that's entertaining in a really bad way. This was, like I said, it was just fucking boring. Like, I fell asleep. I had to go back and like rewatch, pick up from where I left off. Um, I don't know. There's just not. I'm just right in the middle
Yeah, I
there.
guess you get. I guess you get to the point where is it better to be so outrageously bad, or is it better to be just mid? You know, it's like yeah,
Right.
the mid movie is the better movie, but which one would you rather watch? I guess that's the debate you're having right now. Like I know what I've been there.
And again, like I don't know why the crazies are. It's like the beautiful thing about the original is that you didn't know who was crazy and who wasn't. I mean, Richard Francis' character says it in the films, like, how do you know? How do you know who's got the bug and who doesn't? It's like people will respond, like their response to a situation like that, they're gonna be crazy. They'll act crazy. They'll try to escape. They'll do all these things. You don't know who's crazy and who's just fighting back against the military. Um, he didn't have that in this film. There was no. It just felt very like by the numbers. There's no unanswered questions. And you mentioned the Lynn Lowry, Richard Liberty stuff, the father daughter stuff. I did last weekend. I did the Crazies watch along. Rewatched it. It was the first time I'd seen it since probably about a couple of years. I watched it right in the middle of COVID, and it was the first time I had seen it since then. And you really, if you just start writing down like all the stuff in the film, there's a lot of really fucked up stuff in the Crazies. If you
Yeah.
but Romero does it with such like taste and that it almost doesn't feel exploitive almost. But if you tell somebody, it's like, hey, I'm going to watch a movie where military shoots these people and sets them on fire in front of their children. You're like, what? It's like, what are you watching? I'm just like, but I don't know. It just remake itself. I could take it or leave it. I'll probably never watch it again unless I have to. And again, a soundtrack from Tyler Main, who did the score for Dawn of the Dead remake and the Halloween films. Worked a lot with Rob Zombie during this time. I mean, he pretty much did the score for anything during this time. So,
Yeah, I see also Aiden mentioned in the comments Scott Kozar was the writer who he was like his big gimmick around this time was he wrote all the remakes. Like he wrote the TCM remake, Amityville remake, which sucks. Those two remakes suck. I would say I'll put this over those two for sure, but again, it's
probably I would agree. I would say it's better than I'm with you on the Texas Chainsaw remake. I think that's awful.
Oh, good. Okay. Because a lot of people disagree with me when I bury that movie. They're like, oh, that's one of the best ones. I'm like, holy shit. I don't know.
I don't get that at all. I mean, the original Texas Chainsaw is just you can't duplicate that. There's just you
not
can't
even Toby Hooper could do it again. That's why Texas Chainsaw 2 is.
Well, he was smart enough to not even try. He was like, well, I got to do something completely different,
Yeah, you can't because you can. It's just that movie was a lightning in a bottle. It's the biggest lightning in a bottle horror movie. It's just that time, that place, that director, those actors, and that setting. It just really is lightning in a bottle. That's why I love TCM, man.
Yeah, I've often said it's the best. To me, it's the best horror film ever made.
I say it's my second favorite horror movie behind Dawn of the Dead.
It's in my top 5. It's up there with Dawn, Suspiria, Texas Chainsaw, I'd probably put Martin in my top 5 too, and that's just
Martin's
my
great.
personal choice. I know, but I mean, of course, there's The Shining. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff, but I mean, Texas Chainsaw is right up there. It has to be definitely top 5.
Sure.
Well, let's check here. Aiden said I saw the Crazies remake first without having realized it was a remake. I think that's a lot of people. I think a lot of people didn't know that it was a remake when it came out. Because I mean, the original, I mean, was never really.
Yeah, I was shocked. That was like,
Yeah.
what? They were like, I remember being like, dude, what? Like, what is that? Like, I remember at the time, Season of the Witch. Are they going to do? And then they did do.
They did one with Nicolas Cage.
Nicolas Cage, but
it
it's
had nothing
not.
to do with it. Yeah.
I remember being like, no way, and then it wasn't. I was like, okay.
It's an all right time waster, but one I would never watch again. It's pretty much my thoughts. George Romero OG is amazing. Agree. Dirk says the Crazies remake is a polished turd, but it's still shit.
Fair enough.
Very well. He says, yeah, can't stand Timothy Oliphant. Yeah, I didn't much care for him in that. It was just kind of very vanilla performance. Let's see. Dirk says that's about right, Aiden. Almost the same look as TCM32. That's very true. Aiden, one of the last times okay, so he's talking to Dirk here. One of the last times a 2010 film had the sickly yellow-green look like that. Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake and one of the Saw movies. Very true.
Saw movies all had that look. That's right.
Yeah, I think pretty much everything at the time. TCM 2003 remake is truly terrible. You can't duplicate it. And Toby Hooper even realized it. Yeah. So yeah, what do you think about? I mean, just kind of sum everything up. Unless you have any last thoughts about the Crazies remake.
No, I don't have any last thoughts about the Crazies remake.
What are your thoughts on remakes in general? Like,
I generally don't like them. Like, I just don't like. It's 9 times out of 10, I end up liking the original better. It's very few. I off the top of my head can't even think of one that I would say I like the remake better. Like, it's very few. There are remakes I think that did a good job. I like the Maniac remake we were talking about. I think that was before we went live. I think the Dawn of the Dead, I think Night of the Living Dead. I think to an extent, like, you know, a lot of people point towards The Thing and The Fly because those were 80s remakes of 50s movies. So yeah, I can understand that. Like, but overall, it's generally remakes are only done because the original movie was good, and it's like you're trying to cash in, and thus that heart and most importantly, the originality is not there. It's just, okay, this is my take on this template with more money, and you know, I just don't see much charm in that. I really like Romero, like to me the whole story of where Romero was in his career when he made this, and you know what was going on, like that to me is so far more interesting than whatever the hell Breck Eisner was doing. And Sahara had bombed, and this was okay, we'll do a horror film to try to get you above, you know, a good box office. It just doesn't, I don't know, to me originals all the way. But what about you?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just like it's the same as I was saying earlier about, you know, your favorite food. It's like if somebody says, "Hey, you want a steak?" It's like, "Oh yeah, I love steak." And somebody brings you a hamburger. It's like, "Well, the hamburger's all right," but or you know, or sometimes they'll just bring you a plate of shit and say it's steak, and they just insinuate that, "Oh no, this is steak." That's how I feel about it. To me, like I don't give a shit about the movies. Like if I'm not interested in watching, I'm not gonna watch it. And it doesn't replace the original to me at all, like, you know, Halloween remake or the Friday the 13th remake or Texas Chainsaw remake or any of the, you know, a new generation is going to just assume that those films are the originals of, you know, and you hear that a lot with young people now. And you see Texas Chainsaw Massacre, they think of the 2003 version, unfortunately. So I don't care either way. You can remake all you want. I'm not going to go watch them most of the time. But my issue is that it does kind of, for a different generation, replace it, which, you know, maybe people back in the day when they saw The Thing were like, this is not The Thing from another planet. This is some crazy nonsense that John Carpenter is forcing on us. Maybe that mindset was around in the 80s. I don't know. I wasn't there. But we've just had so many. And of course, it's just, you know, studios trying to make profit off of an established name most of the time. So it's all about money. That's all it comes down to with filmmaking, most 99% of the time anyway. But you know, like I said, most of the time, if it doesn't look like something I'm interested in watching, which I'm gonna end the show with this bombshell. I don't know if you you were talking about the David Gordon Green Halloween films. The first one I hated, still don't like.
Me too.
Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends, I like. I really like Halloween Ends.
Really? Okay.
Because it's a Halloween film, but I went into it expecting one thing and they gave me something completely different, and I thought it was still interesting. Even so, I appreciate fan service. I don't care for. Like I
Me
don't want to.
neither.
Like I don't care for fan service. So I appreciate when somebody says, "Here's a Halloween film, but it's going to be absolutely nothing like what you fucking expected it to be." I like that they had the balls to do that. So I appreciated that when I first saw it, because all I heard when it first came out was, "This is the worst fucking movie ever made. How dare they do this to the Michael Myers and blah blah blah." I was like, "Well, I got to see this." Like I had no interest in fucking watching it. I was like, "I got to see it. I got to see what this is." And when I was watching, I was like, am I stupid or am I missing something?" But this isn't bad. Like it kind of just feels like Christine. Like it definitely felt like
Exactly
John
what it is.
Carpenter's
A remake of
Christine.
Christine.
Yeah,
And
pretty
I
much.
told
And I was
Clark.
like, okay. I mean, it's flawed, no doubt, but I appreciated it for what it was. So I appreciate when a remake does something completely different. Um, but you know, a lot of the times it just misses the mark. Like the Maniac remake, I think the perfect job capturing the atmosphere of the original, the feel of the original. It felt like, to me, the original Maniac feels very European, in the way that it's shot, and I don't know, it feels very European to me, and so does the remake, which I think it was directed by a European filmmaker. But
Frank Alfoon, who did P2, really good film.
yeah. But so yeah, I mean, it is what it is at this point for me. They're gonna keep remaking this shit, and there's gonna be another Halloween soon. I'm sure there's gonna be. I'm surprised they haven't done more with like Friday and Nightmare on Elm Street, which that Nightmare on Elm Street remake, the only movie to this day, the only movie I've ever just gotten up and walked out of in the middle of.
I would say that is the worst remake there ever was to me, is the remake of that. I agree. I think that's the worst horror movie remake there ever was. I would agree with that wholeheartedly. The Fog is bad too,
the Fog remake,
but I would say Elm Street I think is even worse. I like making Freddy Krueger a preschool gardener, and was he innocent? Was he not? I was like, oh, this is the bottom of the barrel right here. Like, oh, awful. But yeah, no, I'm in the same boat, man. Like, and now it seems like it's more like legacy stuff. It's like, let's just do a sequel. Like that seems to be the boat now. Like, okay, we won't remake Clerks. We'll make a third Clerks, and they're in their 50s. And I had a heart attack in my life. What? Dante's gonna have a heart attack. It's like, what? Damn, like what? Like, insanity. It's absolute insanity. I don't know. Like with Friday and Elm Street, I know there's rights issues because the Cunningham and Miller have been fighting about that. And then with Elm Street, thankfully the Craven estate owns it, so they would have to sell it in order for them to do an Elm Street remake. I hope they fucking hold it forever. I really do, because if that's what the best they could give us was that piece of shit movie, keep it.
Yeah. I remember when the Nightmare remake originally was coming out, there was a rumor that Billy Bob Thornton was going to play Freddy Krueger, and I thought that would be kind of interesting to have.
Now it seems like everybody wants Kevin Bacon. I'm like, what? Like, what about Kevin Bacon? I don't think that would work at all.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I think we can all agree on this last point here, is that when they do finally decide to remake Nightmare on Elm Street yet again, they should take Freddy Krueger, make him a girl, make him gay.
There you go. Forget about dream
probably what they're gonna do.
God damn it, make Freddy a woman.
All right. Any final thoughts, man? Everybody get on over to the Grande's Graveyard YouTube channel. We're gonna hop off here. Head over. The link is down in the description to his channel. He does a live stream every Thursday night. Always something different. I mean, like 2 weeks ago, you were doing like top 10 Cartoon Network cartoons, and then followed by Video Nasties, movies that tell you don't do something. Like always something interesting, always something off the wall. So I mean, there's something for everybody over on his channel, so check it out. It's down in the description. Check out his film. It's short film, Down by the Bay. Link in the description for that as well. Anything else you got coming up? Anything you want to pitch?
No, not really. We'll do the Quentin Tarantino triple threat on the show this week. That should be
That's
a lot of
true.
fun.
I'm
It'll be
looking
a
forward to that one.
Wednesday night edition because it's Turkey Day this Thursday. So I hope
That's
everybody
true.
has a wonderful Thanksgiving. But Alpha, I want to say thank you so much for having me on. I love working with you. It's like I don't know. I feel like you almost feel like a cousin to me. Like I feel like we're like
Yeah.
like I don't know. We have good chemistry.
I definitely, I've loved coming on your channel, doing some stuff. We did a football, which you haven't been doing the football picks lately, man. I was really digging
Fell
it.
off on that, man. I had a couple guests and they all bailed, and I was like, I'll get to it, and then I just have fallen off. So that's on me. That's 100% on me.
Now well, your Steelers are doing okay.
We're doing okay.
Somehow they're pulling it out, man. They beat my Packers last weekend, so
Outgained in every game, and somehow I will say this though, bold prediction tomorrow against the third string quarterback in Cleveland. I think we will finally have a game where we outgain our opponent, and hopefully we win. I don't know what they winning or losing.
Outgain them and somehow lose.
We will outgain the Browns tomorrow. That's my bold hot take, buddy.
But hey, with Burrow being out for the rest of the season, with Deshaun being out, the Steelers could win this fucking division.
They could. They totally could. They could. If in theory you win those 3 games against division rival, you're 5-0 in the division.
Yeah,
in theory.
So, I mean, the door is open. The door is open, believe it or not. And I mean, Tomlin's doing a great job over there.
Yeah,
somehow pulling out wins. So, but yeah, appreciate everybody in the chat tonight. It's been fun. Grande, appreciate you hopping on, man. I'm gonna have you back at some point. We're gonna do something else. I'm gonna bring you on and make you watch that goddamn Night of the Living Dead 3D.
Let's do it. Let's do it, man. I'm so down. It has to be better than the Day of the Dead remake.
We'll see. I mean, it's got Sid Haig in it. I love Sid Haig, so I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, in 3D, we'll see.
But appreciate everybody. I don't know what the hell I'll be doing coming up. I got some stuff.
Dark Side show.
I got Tuesday nights. It's Tales from the Dark Side Tuesday. I'm going through watching 2 episodes of Tales from the Dark Side, starting at season 1. I got episodes 5 and 6 this week, I believe. So far, so good. I'm really digging it. It's the first time I'm actually sitting down to watch. I mean, I owe it to you, Grande, for one thing, just because you've covered the show quite a bit on your channel, and it's kind of inspired me to hop on, and there you go. Get with the program. So it's one that I've needed to watch for quite a while, and I'm finally doing it. So there you go. Nice. I've seen that time. That came out probably right around the 2004 era, dude. Is that when that hat came out?
I got this like less than a year ago. This is brand spanking new from Fright Rags.
Okay, so that's Fright Rags. They had, I remember seeing hats like that. Or no, I think the ones I'm thinking of had like the zombie hands and stuff all around it too. Fuck, I don't remember. But yeah, I appreciate everybody in the chat. I'll see you guys when I see you. Let's see. I got you a new subscriber already.
There we go.
1911 Guitar Dude just subscribed to Grindy's Graveyard.
Thank you, sir.
You won't regret it. Let's see. Dirk said, get these out of the way. Dirk says, good job again on Down by the Bay.
Thank you.
And yeah, just Aiden and Dirk shitting on the Fog remake. But I appreciate all you guys in the chat. It's been fun. We'll see you next time here on the Alpha Romero channel, and Grande. We'll see you only on the Graveyard. Did I do it okay then?
You did it perfect. I love it.
I always want to do that. But you guys have a great rest of the night. And as always, as a great man once said, stay scared. Night, everybody.